Yeah, right, yeah, so yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, dear me.
Okay.
2, 1, and action.
Great. Thank you, LTV. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the East Hampton Town Board work session of Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. Michael, if you could please read the roll call.
Councilmember Flight. Deputy Supervisor Lease.
Present.
Councilmember Rogers.
Present.
Councilmember Calder-Piedmont.
Present.
Supervisor Brooke Gonzalez.
Present. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this morning, we start with public portion. We ask you to kindly keep your comments to 3 minutes. And then we have 5 work session topics. First is bids with Jeannie Carrozza. Then we're going to have a presentation by David Lease, John Rooney, and Matt Jedlicka on the Lieutenant Lee Hayes Youth Park redevelopment. That'll be followed by a presentation from the folks from the Nature Conservancy. We welcome you, Nicole Mahar. Am I pronouncing that correct? Mar. Will Bowman, and we've got Sam Klein here too. Welcome, Sam. That'll be followed by an ADU construction loan pilot program recommendation by Mark Morgan Perez, and then we'll have an after-hearing discussion of Chapter 255 accessory staff housing. That'll be followed by liaison reports, and we have a few resolutions today. So we are going to start with public portion, and I have 2 folks signed up. So Cy Kinsella, welcome. Oh, you know what? Can we just, let me just adjust the podium. I usually do that when I come in. All right, we're set.
Okay.
Sure.
Supervisor Brooke Gonzalez, I have 2 questions. I hope you'll forgive me if I run a little over.
Thank you. We just need you talking into the microphone. Just make sure that that's directed up there. Great.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
I have 2 questions. I hope you'll forgive me if I run a little over the 3 minutes. My first question pertains to per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS substances, contaminants, specifically perfluoropropanoic acid detected by Suffolk County Water Authority, south and down gradient of the East Hampton Battery Centre. During the recent town board meeting on June 2nd, you said, and I quote, "I refuse to ask families to wait years for a court to decide who is to blame before their water is protected. Accountability matters. But a lawsuit does not test a private well or groundwater, nor does it ensure enough water is available. That work has to start now." I know who is to blame. It's you. I blame you for unnecessarily exposing residents to harmful PFAS contaminants by failing to test the groundwater 2.5 years ago in January 2024, when I brought to your attention that the East Hampton Storage Centre fire that occurred in May 2023 would have contaminated our sole source aquifer. As you observed, accountability matters, and I hold you accountable for failing to protect those families from ingesting toxic chemicals. In January 2024, I sent you a detailed analysis with supporting documentation, which I also sent to over 1,000 other residents, showing that the East Hampton Energy Storage Centre is a 4,100 square foot unit that houses thousands of lithium-ion battery cells in tightly packed racks. Based on LG Chem's safety data sheet, I estimated that there were 98,328 individual battery cells, individual units containing lithium ion. For reference, that's well over a ton of lithium ion salt. You were aware that the lithium-ion batteries caught fire on May 31st, 2023, destroying the battery storage unit. I provided you with documents showing that toxic PFAS chemicals are essential components of lithium-ion batteries, including electrodes, cathode and anode, binder, electrolytes, main components and additives, and the separator, the porous membrane. And that the industry itself acknowledged that commercial alternatives to such PFAS chemicals were over 13 years away. That was in 2024, so that's 11 years away today. You knew that to quell the fire, an emergency sprinkler system ran for 30 hours, releasing approximately 2.2 million gallons of water to extinguish the fire. So much water, in fact, that it flowed out of the building onto the adjacent road. The town buildings department evidently approved the facility's plans without a containment system for the voluminous amount of water needed to extinguish a thermal runaway chain reaction fire. Consequently, it flowed on into our sole source aquifer, carrying high concentrations of toxic PFAS chemicals. The analysis and documents showed that the unavoidable consequence of such excessive water use is that airborne particulate matter, soot, and toxic PFAS from the decomposition of the batteries and the incomplete combustion of the electrodes, binder, electrolyte, and separator washed outside of the building, adversely impacting our groundwater. My analysis concluded, even if you disagree, and I'm quoting, even if you disagree with some of this information, sufficient evidence still warrants a full, transparent investigation to ascertain the facts. We owe it to our families to assess the risks before recommissioning the East Hampton Energy Storage Centre. Kathy, had you heeded my warning and tested the groundwater, residents living down gradient from the facility would have had the opportunity to mitigate the risk and avoid exposure to PFAS contaminants. Sadly, because you ignored my warning and the documents I provided, residents have been unnecessarily ingesting PFAS contaminated water for years. You said that you refused to ask the families to wait years before their water is protected, but that is precisely what you did. You waited for 2.5 years until the water contamination was detected, and it was too late to mitigate the risk before residents started drinking the contaminated water. So my first question is this. If someone in the family who had been ingesting water from any of the 30 contaminated wells gets sick, perhaps gets cancer from ingesting the toxic PFAS chemicals, how would you explain to the family that you were the person responsible who had the information at hand but refused to test groundwater 2.5 years ago? Accountability matters.
Thank you.
That was a question.
This is a public comment where we hear from the community. It's not a discussion. We can have a conversation offline, Si.
I would like an answer, and I'm sure the people of the town would like an answer as to why you failed to test the groundwater when this was brought to your attention 2.5 years ago. You knew the facts. They were irrefutable. I took considerable effort to outlay them. I provided the substantiating documentation. I provided links. I provided my work schedules, my sheets, everything that was required for you to make an informed decision. I don't get paid. I did this because I wanted you to make an informed decision, but you failed to do so. And I think it's only fair that the town, especially those living south of the battery energy storage facility, receives an answer. Why didn't you test the water, the groundwater?
Si, I'm not going to answer you right now. We can have a conversation offline. I have an update in my liaison report, and we have other folks that want to speak today. So,
okay. I have a question, and second question, if you permit me.
no, we're not taking questions. Like I said, you can call my office and we can have a conversation, but this is public comment. There are other folks that want to address the board today.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Si. Mike Mahoney. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. My name is Mike Mahoney, who live on Beach Lane in Waynescott. And just to reiterate, I support one of the most important jobs that you all have is to maintain the good quality of water, the drinking water. All life, human, animal, whatever, needs that. That being said, the reason why I came today is I have a gripe about South Fork Wind, the agreement that the town signed with them and what's not been done on Beach Lane. There is a pile of millings on the street down from my house a little bit towards the ocean that is higher than the grade all around. When it rains, we get a significant amount of flooding across the street. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable to walk through that flooding. I'd like that to be resolved and addressed. I don't care if you want to pave that property, I don't object to that, but you got to end the water runoff from that piling millings that floods our street. Next is more personal. When South Fork Wind wanted to take part of our apron to make a road for their construction, I met with them and I agreed to it, providing that they restored it to what it was before. And they assured me and assured me and assured me that it would be. I have sent and met with Kate Rogers. I've had people from the Eversource. I've had people from South Fork Wind Farm all come to my property and notice the gravel that they threw in at the end of that driveway, at the apron. One, they put too much down. Two, they didn't do what they said they would. Our driveway is a tarred driveway with small pea stone crushed into it. If you attempt to ride a bicycle across our apron, it is scary, is the only way to put it. It's unsafe. The stone is just too high. I have fallen walking across the apron of my driveway. My wife walks with a cane. I really insist that that be resolved and resolved quickly. When I pull out of the driveway with my cars, and it doesn't matter which one, I spit stones down the road from the rear tires, picking up the size of the stone that is in my driveway, and the tires expense it out. That's what I'm here for. I hope you'll address these concerns and get back to us. Have a great day, and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mike. Would anyone else like to address the board during public comment? Barry? Welcome, Barry.
I want to talk a little bit about water quality preservation. I mean, it's come to light that there's contamination based on the fire, the batteries and so forth. And of course, as I noted in the WCAC meeting to Kate, there was reason to believe that there would be some serious pollution resulting from that. And Cy Kinsella pointed it out 3 years ago. And so for anyone to say they're surprised that it resulted in contamination is odd, because a thinking person would have to assume that contaminants of that size and amount are going to leach into groundwater through what is basically pretty porous soil around here for the most part. So with that in mind, we see a pattern here of neglect and I think negligence when it comes to protecting groundwater, despite some claims that protecting water purity is a priority for this board. I think it tends to be after the fact. I think often we're being protected from finding out about the pollution that exists rather than being protected from it. The way to protect from pollution of the aquifer is to prevent it. when you have activities at the airport such as selling leaded gas, which is a known contaminant in the atmosphere and the environment, when you don't investigate fires of batteries that are going to leach into the groundwater, when you have a gun club above the sole source aquifer, when everyone knows that the byproduct of outdoor shooting is intensive pollution of soil and eventually water, because again, you have it in a very porous part of the town in terms of the soil, and it's sandy, and if you're finding lead contamination at the surface level, you can expect that after 40 years, some contamination has most likely leached into the groundwater. Having a Suffolk County well carved out from the gun club property in 1993, and when you tell people this stuff, it's like a bad love canal nightmare drama. You kind of can't make it up. I mean, you have the byproducts of shooting, cartridges, expended shells, etc., just coating a massive amount of area, acres and acres and acres. And to say this is the best use of a property owned by the public is really bizarre, that you want to continue to go back there and contaminate that property. And the fact that the town has never investigated, never done a serious investigation, let alone a cleanup. And right now, it's just some people have scraped together some cartridges and put them in plastic bags. That's negligence again. So we see a pattern here, and I think it's unacceptable.
Thank you, Barry. Would anyone else like to address the board? Zach, is there anyone on the line?
Yes, we have some people on the line. Give me one
Great,
second.
thank you. Please put them through.
Caller 779, you are live. Caller 779, you are live. Caller 4761, you are live.
Chamber of Commerce. Calling for comment on two things. One, to thank you for your help on fighting for more money returning to Montauk from that hotel motel tax in Suffolk County. I think it's a big win that that money is returning for the lighthouse and that we got the infrastructure line passed. And then two, I just want to let you guys know that we sent an email from the entire board of directors in support of the proposed accessory staff housing amendment that's on your agenda to speak about today. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Leo. Are there others, Zach?
There was one person that was we couldn't hear them, but they had left. I'm not sure if they want to call back, but we couldn't hear them.
So they hung up, or they're just not answering?
No, they hung up, but we couldn't hear them.
Okay. So we are going to move on to our topics. First up is bids with Jeannie Carosa. Welcome, Jeannie.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Jeannie. The first bid to accept today is for T-shirts, sweatshirts, and other uniform items. ABC Custom Sales is the apparent low bidder, and that's on for resolution for today. Resolution's on for Thursday. The first is accepting the bid for surplus oyster seed sales. The apparent high bidders are John Nicholas from East Hampton Oyster in the amount of $23 per thousand for 3.3 millimeter, and Michael Coquel, $35 per thousand for 5/16 inch. Next is the accepting of the bid for Fort Hill Cemetery interments and maintenance contract. The apparent low bidder for that is Peter Joyce Seaside Landscaping and Pools. Its annual cost is $30,124.64 for the first contract year. And for the interments, it's $1,300 per and $650 for incomplete. Next is the purchase and delivery of personal watercraft. We did a rebid for that. The apparent low bidder is Long Island, Kawasaki, and Yamaha. The amount for that one is $17,094. Then I have 3 notices going on: the Joint Fuel Facility Maintenance Service, tractor for the Parks and Recreation Department, and HVAC repairs, service, and installation for the communication towers. And that's it.
Questions for Jeannie?
No.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you, Jean.
Okay, next up is a presentation on the Lieutenant Lee Hayes Youth Park redevelopment. So David, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. I'll just wait. I'm going to bring up our Superintendent of Recreation, John Rooney, and then also Matt Jellica, who is our engineering outside consultant from LK McLean Associates, and Chelsea Winslow is assisting us. Matt, you can come on up also. Overall, this is another development within the town of East Hampton in which we are looking to increase the town's recreational capacity. Thank you for that.
All right, you're done.
We're done. We're out. Lunchtime, everyone. And recreational opportunities. What makes this a little bit different than the groundbreaking that we just did, in which it was for pickleball, 8 pickleball courts and basketball courts at Stephen Hand's Path just this week. This specific park is more dedicated to youth and to their youth experiences on there in a very safe environment also with supervision. This location I know very well. It actually used to be a tennis facility that the town swapped land back in the day. I actually used to lay clay on here back as a job in the early 1990s. And what you'll see some of the information here as it transformed and opened in 1993. The rollerblading rink used to be square. I think J.B. Verga was there at one point then too. But since the early 1990s to today, it is a very active location. Again, this is discussion about Lee Hayes Youth Park. They'll let the board and discuss with the board, which is located at 306 Abraham's Path, Amagansett. I also want to thank Ms. Sharon Bacon for being here too, who is one of our great ambassadors of youth recreation within the town of East Hampton. Your son was a mentor and a friend also, and he's missed every day. Thank you. Lieutenant Lee Hayes, next page, please. The youth park timeline, very simply, in 1993, the youth park opened in July. Much of what was there, again, was a square skating rink, a little basketball, tennis courts, but the youth of East Hampton found their way there, including myself and many of my friends. In 1994, bids for construction came in for the clubhouse, which was installed there then too, a little expansion of it. In 1995, the recreational programs began at the park. And in 2021, the town board approves the renaming of the park in memory of Lieutenant Lee Hayes Youth Park, which happened in October. Following that, in 2021, the town purchased the neighboring property at 190 Town Lane. This is actually purchased from the Gilbert family. Mrs. Gilbert was a wonderful educator in the John Marshall middle school system for decades. I didn't have her, but she worked with the town on that property to be able to expand the youth park onto the property that we finally are talking about today. In 2022, part of the Juneteenth commemoration, the town unveils a memorial plaque at the park, along with a history kiosk highlighting Lieutenant Hayes' biography. 2022, John Rooney and I started full discussions for the park and building expansion, and that began then. Next. Lieutenant Lee Archer Hayes. Mr. Hayes was an Amagansett resident and a member of the 477th Bombardment Group with the famed Tuskegee Airmen, the first all-black aviators in the United States military. His legacy will be left here for generations to come. Many of his of his family still live in town. We see him on a daily basis, and it's a legacy of honor, compassion, and fortitude. I've never met Mr. Hayes, but I know that through many of his family members that we met either on that day or throughout school then too, and you can only see what Mr. Hayes taught to them all. John Rooney, do you want to go through the next couple slides for us, please?
Sure. Good morning. I didn't know that you worked at the park, putting clay down and everything. I didn't know.
Yeah, it was sport time over there. We used to play a lot of tennis, and you make a couple bucks, maybe like $7 an hour putting down clay. It was a job.
Yeah.
You got to go buy your tops,
great.
baseball cards somehow. Right.
So the youth park amenities as they stand today, the park is located at the corner of Town Lane and Abraham's Path. And this facility offers a multitude of activities, including tennis. There's 2 courts there, an oval track for walking, jogging, rollerblading, riding bikes, an inline hockey rink, which is in need of repair at the moment, a basketball court, and a playground, and a skateboard park, which is ramps and apparatus for which includes half pipe rails and then we have picnic tables and a clubhouse. And the clubhouse we use for like indoor chess during the winter time, and just to allow folks to come in and just get a break if the weather is not happy. And then we also have ADA accessible restrooms and changing table and parking there as well. So that's the way that the park stands at the moment. And the park rules are generally, it's a youth park, so it's mostly geared towards the kids in grade school through grade 12. And children under 14 must be accompanied by an adult, and adults must be accompanied by a child to play tennis or basketball. This way, the park is always available for kids that arrive, and we don't have adults hogging up, spaces, and they can go to other locations, something's across the street if they're tennis players or whatever. Park hours, we're open year-round, weather permitting, Monday through Sunday. When school's in session, we're really open after school until it gets dark. Weekends and holidays, we open up at 9 o'clock. The only days we're closed is the whole day is Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and then in the summertime, about this time now through Labor Day, we open up every day at 9 and open until it gets dark outside. And we have 2 slides just showing aerial photos of 2 different directions of the park the way it stands now.
If we could just stay right on this one. So the current park is at the intersection of Abraham's Path Road and Town Lane Road. As you see here, there's tennis courts on there. Part of the discussion happened where you'll see where to the southwest, where it says current, that's the property that the town purchased. We looked into rehabilitating the engineer's estimate for rehabilitation of the actual skating area there, and we found out that the cost from there was high, and it led us to start having greater discussions about the youth park and where better use of funding might be, and how we can maybe address some of the greater needs for the user groups. With that, I want to thank John Rooney and his staff for starting a user survey and a community outreach plan in that year. On the next page, if you don't mind here, Chelsea, then too. Knowing that this location actually directly across the streets from another major recreational facility, being where it's indoor facility currently licensed by Sport Time and also the Terry King Ball Field, we did a user survey, community outreach. This started in the May of 22. It was done by East Hampton Town's recreational staff, and asked users, the children and family members, to complete a survey questionnaire to help guide potential expansion plans. What we found there is that 36% of the respondents on there wanted a playground, a larger playground, swings, and a jungle gym, because the one there is currently mostly geared to a younger youth. I think it's up to 8 potentially, being the age of 8. 22% wanted greater gathering spots, more picnic tables, sitting areas, and shade. I can only think that might be some from the parents on there that go with their children on there that want to rest out of the sun after, while they're watching their kids also. Maybe even the kids themselves when they are exercising there. Lastly, another large percentage wanted a turf or a soccer field that would be there then too, or also making a multi-use aspect on the skating rink that was currently there. Other listed requests were for basketball court refurbishments, hockey rink refurbishments, and Wi-Fi then too. So next, before I bring up Matt Jellica, we start developing a plan working with John Rooney and LKMA and staff to see what we can potentially fit into the space there that would start to address some of these larger requests from some of our user groups and to be able to offer more opportunities and programming, which is what we're looking at. Currently on the left, you'll see how the park lays out. And what we were proposing on the right-hand side is a redevelopment and addition of playgrounds, and other facilities, which we'll talk about very shortly then too. Let me go into this. Matt, do you want to start going on to the next slide, which be take us through some of our proposed site plans and options for the town board to address?
So, we took the information that that you provided as far as what some of the residents would like. And rather than try to refurbish the hockey rink and refurbish the undersized basketball courts, the decision was made to do a full regulation court basketball court with adjustable rims, 8-foot rims on the side, for kids that can't shoot a 10-foot hoop.
And we're seeing that, sorry to stop. So Howard Wood, who's worked for the town, also helped us address that when we did that at the Montauk Skate Park with the 8-foot rims. We're also, as the supervisor knows, we're doing that in Waynescott also because, again, some children just can't shoot on a 10-foot rim. And we're seeing that being pretty successful. A lot of kids are using that in Montauk.
Right. Yeah, the Montauk one is very successful, and the one that we'll do at Fred Thiel Athletic Facility, it'll be the same. So same deal here. It'll be the same type of basketball setup. Ignore the green colors, it's just hypothetical. It'll be an acrylic coated asphalt lot. Rather than rebuild or refurbish the hockey rink, this is going to be a new multi-use rink. So it'll be striped for inline hockey. It'll be striped for soccer. And there'll be pickleball courts that are striped. So, residents or children can use the courts for pickleball courts. This is a slightly older rendering of the site plan, but there's a shade shelter, which will be near the playground area. And the playground area is going to be an inclusive playground and swing area that'll be fenced in. That way parents don't have to worry about their kids running. So that's in the southwest corner of the property. It's hard to see on this particular rendering, but there's an addition to the youth building, and then there is a small 16-foot by 24-foot garage for maintenance and other things like that. Chelsea, if you want to switch. Okay, so we went through all these different things, but the new regulation basketball court with the 10-foot and 8-foot rims.
Because the current one there is not a regulation court. It's more just an asphalted area for individuals to shoot hoops.
Yeah, it's a small, and it's also got significant cracks in it. So it's in need of something. So this plan proposes to remove that, relocate to a bigger court, but in its place, we're going to pour a concrete slab so that it'll be a flat area for the kids that are skateboarding on the skate park. And rather than be in the area of the ramps, they can skate on the flat area. So that footprint that the basketball court used to take up will still be some sort of hard surface for kids to skate on. As I said, the multi-sport court is for soccer, hockey, and pickleball. There's the playground and swing set area will be inclusive and fenced. There'll be the new shade shelter, similar to the shade shelter that is at the Fred Thiel Athletic Facility. There's another one that's going to be built at the Fred Thiel facility and another one at the Montauk Skate Park. So this will be the same as those. We're expanding the clubhouse by 520 square feet to improve activities and, the area for activities, some office space. And the current setup now, if the people in the office have to use the restroom, they have to go outside and use the public restroom. So we're adding a bathroom inside for the staff. There's currently a nice jogging and walking trail around the facility. Now that we're expanding into the adjacent area, we're expanding that trail and looping it around and going past the playground area and looping back in. The extended gate flat area, we discussed that, the storage garage, and we're going to extend, obviously everything's fenced in currently and controlled access, so we will continue the fencing to fence in the larger part of the property. Next slide. So this is just 2D on most of the stuff except for the two buildings, the addition on the clubhouse and the storage building. Next slide. Again, shows the same thing, locations of the two buildings. Next slide. Okay, so this is the proposed rendering of, what we're looking at. In this one, we changed the color on the court surfaces, and that's something that during the construction, we can make the decision on whether we want to have a blue and gray basketball court or maroon or, whatever. It'll be an acrylic surface proposed for that. We are not proposing to continue the blue acrylic coating on the walking trail. So that'll just be an asphalt trail that connects to it and extends into the property to the west. Next slide. Okay, so the clubhouse addition, like I said, it's 520 square feet. We're also working with natural resources as far as swapping out the sanitary system and upgrading to an IA sanitary system. So that'll be part of this project, paid for with water quality money. So as far as the footprint or the plan of the building with the addition, the current setup has in the lower right corner, which is the southeast corner, that's where the two restrooms were, and they will remain there. The way it currently exists, if you, as somebody working in the office, have to use the restroom, again, you have to go out and go to the public restrooms. So in the center area, we added a single-use ADA accessible bathroom. We kind of reconfigured some of the existing space to add an office space, and then we added a kind of like a reception area where files can be stored and whatnot, and then a large recreation area. The look will, the addition will, acknowledge the aesthetics of the existing building, the cedar shingles, similar windows, the whole thing. When it's all said and done, we'll have re-roofed the existing structure to tie in with the new structure, so the whole thing will have a new roof. We'll likely re-side it so that when you look at it, it looks like a brand new building, but it'll be an addition on the existing building.
Thanks, Matt. So overall, I just took out these two snippets of what our potential site plan would be looking like. Again, the discussion was to make sure that one of the primary focuses was going to be the playground, an inclusive playground, but also allow for multiple families that have multiple children to do multiple things. I hope that makes sense, right? In which one child might be playing basketball, but a younger child might want to be on a play set then too. Some kids might be doing programming on the tennis courts on there through the town's recreational programming, but another child might want to shoot hoops or just go for a walk on there, or the parent might want to go for a walk. What you'll see a lot of times in the program that they are for tennis and such, yes, there might be some drop-offs, but a lot of parents will stay there under the shade and wait on there or go for a walk. So we tried to develop a park that could address a lot of individuals' recreational desires and uses and try to keep people connected to health and fitness and recreation, maybe deconnect some which ways off their phones and their tablets. One of the things is a lot of this is always weather dependent. So by looking at it as if we're going to be investing as the town into this facility as a whole, we wanted to make sure that the facility could be used during inclement weather or maybe colder weather by a place that we could offer greater amount of programming inside and also for greater storage. Again, when you're starting to invest into a facility like this, how is this facility going to be used for the next 30 years on there then too? Next steps, if you don't mind. Next steps, again, it's a town board presentation for comments, not just from the town board, but from others in the community. We'll incorporate these comments into final engineered plans. We will look to finalize playground apparatus selections on there, which hasn't been done yet. And then again, when we get confirmation that the board is comfortable with what we're presenting here, like to move forward on there, we will put forward RFP for construction. Timeframe on that, we don't know, and construction scheduling, we wouldn't know also until that time. The youth park might be closed for a little bit, or we might be able to do construction methodology that we could keep certain elements open. That still be discussed at a later time on there then too. But overall, again, this park was open nearly over 30 years ago on there. I think it is an appropriate time for the town to invest into the park based on the amount of use that the park gets. And let's hopefully the next couple of generations, if not more, can enjoy the Lieutenant Lee Hayes Youth Park. It's well deserved. It's well named after a great man. And Madam Supervisor, that's what we have for the board's discussion.
Okay. Can we go back to page 10, please? And it might be helpful because we went through this rather quickly. So for folks that are just seeing this for the first time, if we could just compare current versus proposed and go, individual component by component about what's changing and what's not changing, right? So the parking lot is staying as is.
Parking lot stays as is, and the skate area, which is on the west side of the walking track.
Matt, you want to point it out if you come to the screen, if you don't mind?
So, yeah, the parking area, that all stays, and the skate area stays. So the skate area is the same.
Right.
And the walking trail loops around currently onto the west side of the skate area and then around on the east side. So we're keeping part of that trail on the west side of the skate area, but then beyond that, in the woods, in the area that you purchased, that's where the new playground will be, the swing sets.
Right.
So then if we head north on the main area of the park, we're not doing anything with the tennis courts. So the tennis courts all stay as is. But if we go to the small basketball area, that's the section that will be removed and re-poured as a nice flat skating area for the skateboarders and anybody using, scooters or whatever. Then once you move north of that, that's where the rink currently exists. And the rink, we changed the layout of the rink so that it faces east-west. The pickleball courts will face north-south in the rink. But that made sense in being able to fit that and a new regulation basketball court in the north corner of the
So it got rotated.
It got rotated. 90 degrees. Yep, 90 degrees. So, currently it's lengthwise facing north-south. So it was rotated. So that takes out the backside of the track. So that's why the track then heads to the west, further west, and will be a new trail that then loops around on the west side of the rotated rink.
And this new, the rotated is going to be lined for, you had said, hockey, soccer, and pickleball.
Hockey, soccer, and pickleball.
And the pickleball is, again, it's for youths, for adults would have to accompany a child, right, to be able to play pickleball there.
It'll still comply with the park rules.
Okay.
They won't be fixed nets. That's the only thing. One thing,
Okay.
we'll be rolling. We'll have to get the equipment to roll in nets on there.
Right. So one thing we didn't touch on, but it might be important to something like this is the current building. You can't really see behind the trees here, but the current building has a full basement for storage. And the decision was made that let's increase the storage. It's really not that much more expensive to just do the excavation and a full foundation under the addition. So the plan is to have a full basement under the addition as well. So the whole building will have full basement where they can store the pickleball nets and any other, recreation things that are needed to be stored there. There is an area outside of the rink to store like the soccer goals so that you can open the new dasher boards. There'll be a double gate. You'll be able to remove the soccer goals, take them out, and set them in a stored area outside of the rink so that if people are playing inline hockey or whatever, they're unimpeded.
So now we get to the new basketball court then,
So-
right? It's
right.
going to be,
So the new basketball court will be so we're not pushing, we can't really push any further north because the property line and fence line are essentially running right along here. And so in this curve, in that radius right there, that's where the basketball court will be set.
okay.
And then if you go back over to the area with the existing play structure, the existing play structures will stay as is. There'll be some reworking of the building for access and entry and that sort of thing. Currently there's ramp and stairs. That'll require a little bit of reworking to, maintain handicap accessibility into the addition. Currently, there's a platform on the west side, so you get up there and then enter into the western facade of the building. Now it'll be, you come up and enter into the south facade of the addition.
Okay. And then if you could just show where the shade shelter is going to be?
Okay, the shade shelter is this location right here, which is just
Got it.
between the play structure and the rink. And it's sort of tied into the slab outside of the rink, but again, I've said this on other presentations, these are really just lines on paper at this point in time. So if it made sense to pull the shade shelter closer to the playground, we could do that. One thing I did not mention, and it's, would be hard to see in this water fountain proposed over by the shade shelter. That way there'll be, water for the kids playing on anything out there. But yeah, we can shift that over. The actual playground itself, we'll have to work with you to come up with all the different features that.
Ian's an expert at that now. After doing Maidstone Park playground.
Right. This rectangle over here is just a large swing set.
Okay.
Which will have different types of swings, so accessible and not.
And then where would the new storage garage be?
New storage garage is in the northwest corner,
Okay. Got it. See it.
accessible from Town Lane.
So part of the site plan here was also to have sensitivity to the residential neighborhood then too, and try to keep everything as condensed as possible, but also allow for open play. So that's why we kept everything where it's already been developed. There'd be less tree clearing that way and also a greater amount of buffering than to the areas to the west on there.
And we may leave some trees, like, it's when you're doing a rendering and trying to show the features, sometimes you don't want to have all the trees in there. So like that might be something that around the storage building, leave some of the trees. And again, we can work through that as we work through the plans.
Thank you, Matt.
And then I'm just trying to remember how much we put in the capital plan for this. Was it 2 million or 2.5?
I thought it was, well, we might be up to
2 million.
2 million right now. We are looking for a grant for that also potentially. So there's 2 million in the capital plan for that. Yes, that's correct.
We'll be working with Nicole on submitting a grant.
Right, for the
late July.
consolidated funding that's due at the end of July.
Yep.
Great.
So we'll work with her and get her all the information.
So yeah, thank you for the synopsis of it. But again, before we do that or go to any final engineering, wanted to make sure that the board had any other questions on there or design elements.
No, I think it's a long overdue upgrade. I'm glad to see it. I know the park, not living far from the park, I know it really gets a lot of use from our young people and children, and it's great to see more amenities for them, actually. David, I know it's very dark green grass, but I guess that's not going to be manicured, fertilized grass that you're showing there, right?
No, and I mean, that's something that we can, again, work with you if you want to see certain areas that are nice and maintained and other areas just kind of, naturalize. It depends on what you want. And
Yeah,
again,
part of the structure that was at 190 Town, there was a house there. There was a small house there. It was 800 square feet, maybe. We initially at one time thought about turning that into storage, but we decided to take it down. But that area's been open, but it does allow for an area to be revegetated as desired. And we can continue to look into that. It's mostly trying to develop what the apparatus programming would be. Basketball courts, multi-use parks. What do you want to see? What don't you want to see out there then too? And because it's not a tremendous amount of space, but it's a well-used space.
I really appreciate the idea of pickleball for young people too, for youth, because I'm sure they have trouble getting on to all the other courts, because I know it's very popular with the adults of all ages. So I'm glad to see something specifically for them as well.
John, could you just talk a little bit about the programming that we offer there now? And I know that you've got a lot geared up for when school gets out.
Yeah, sure. We're finishing up our spring tennis program at that location, and then we'll be starting up our summer tennis program, which might be sold out already. I don't know. I'd have to look. We also have a basketball program in the evenings. It's running there. And then we have other various programs all around town. So just at that location, it's mostly tennis and basketball, morning tennis, evening basketball. And we leave the weekends free just for use of the park.
Great, thank you. As I just know, taking my kids there back in the day for tennis clinics and basketball clinics with Howard and all that. I think a shade shelter would be welcomed.
Yeah, I think it looks great. I got a question about the court where the pickleballs will be. Is that controlled by staff then, or do users get to move? So
I guess we'll have to also kind of see how that goes at the time. In my head right now, it's like ask staff. Staff would move that back and forth. Because like at the Playhouse, when we have the indoor program there, there's some time slots that might not necessarily need staff running it, and sometimes folks wheel out and set up. But being the youth park, my vision is to have the staff do it. So, just having staff take care of it.
or certain days that are
question.
scheduled, so people know when pickleball's available versus.
It might not necessarily. It could be a scheduled time. We got to see how it's used.
Okay.
It could be most of the time. There could be a soccer group that wants to be out there. And if there's like 12 soccer people and no one shows up for pickleball, we'd want to let them play soccer. So I don't know. We'd have to over time see that. If we need to schedule it, we'll schedule it.
But the flexibility is built in that it'll work for either, and
Oh yeah,
we can
it's just,
operationally
as
see.
time goes on. I mean, recreation's always changing with popularity of different activities year to year of who wants to do what. And I think we just need to have it open to whatever folks want to do.
I think it's great to have that flexibility. I know we did a similar thing at the Fred Thiel recreational facility, where there's fields that can be used in all different types of ways depending on the interest at the time.
And we also depend on the users a lot of times to, like at Fred Thiel, is to like move their equipment off the field, put it on the side so everyone can share that space. And everybody, they're pretty, workable. Everybody works together and, cleans up and whatever.
Then one last question, the storage shed with access to Town Lane, is that just to make it easier vehicular access to drop off?
Yeah, so when we were talking about having storage, if you put a storage building and you didn't access it from Town Lane, where would you access it from? The parking lot? And that means you'd have to displace something that already exists. So the only way to get, but we need some sort of storage. Plus, we thought that this would be better. I don't know, let's say we decided, you know what, we're going to need a garbage pail at a certain location deeper into the park. Then those crews can come in the back of the park and maybe come in that way. We also, we want to make the walking trails to be wide, like 10 feet, so we can continue to plow those during the winter so folks can use it. Maybe there might be an entrance from the back corner for that. We don't know. And also, if there's going to be storage, let's say beyond the rec department, it's the parks department, they want to store some things there, they can have easy access from Town Lane with not disrupting the operation of the park. So we felt that was the most logical spot. But you'd have to displace something to enter in from the parking lot, because right now there's no way to get in there.
Right.
No, that makes sense. And then you also have some green area over there. Is there any plan for that, or just open
I think
space?
that's just part of the renderings, as Matt was saying, and then however, maybe it's the future space for beyond me and beyond all of us, where, there could be expansion in the park, and who knows,
Picnic tables or,
Bocce?
It could be, but unless the town decides to leave it more natural, who knows? That's part of the ongoing discussions, so.
No, I think it looks great. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, John. Thanks, Matt.
So can I ask, so the more multi-purpose facility, is that going to be fenced in?
Yes, it's going to have
Yeah,
dashboards.
Dashboards.
It's
Similar.
just be
So
like,
does that mean it's like to here? What is a dasher board?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you're playing soccer, the ball is, and there's something to stop it from flying out
Higher
and
towards
hitting
the
the
goal
basketball
end.
courts.
Yeah, so,
yeah, I think a dashboard might be like 4-foot dashboard with fencing over top. It might take you 8 or 10 feet.
yeah, it goes up higher at the end of
Got
where the
it.
goals are, but it's, similar to how the existing rink is.
Okay. Great.
Correct. So I will digest it. Anyone in the community digest it, please reach out to my office, John's office then too. If we hear any comments on this in the next couple of weeks, we'll bring it back to the town board for discussion on there. And then hopefully we'll get into some final engineering, some final picks on that. We wanted to make sure everyone understood where we were progressing on this because we've been working on this for a couple of years, but we're on the precipice of getting this done potentially the next calendar year. And sooner than that, maybe.
Just a question. So I know we'll have to do a resolution to be able to submit the consolidated funding application for this project. And I'm guessing we're far enough along in engineering. We have what we need to submit for that application?
I think we'll have a strong application, yes.
Great.
Yeah, we're definitely far enough along for the application.
All right, beautiful.
Like I said, Nicole's already reached out to us and we're providing information to her.
Okay, terrific. All right. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so now we're up to the presentation by the Nature Conservancy of the Accabonac Harbor Restoration Project. Welcome, Nicole. And Zach, if you could let Will into the meeting.
Good morning, and thank you to the town board for welcoming me to your work session this morning. And thank you to Kim Shaw from the Natural Resources Department for putting this topic on your agenda this morning. I want to share the status of a project that the Nature Conservancy, or TNC, has been working on in Accabonac Harbor for a number of years in partnership with the Peconic Estuary Partnership. We have been assessing the condition of the salt marsh in Accabonac Harbor to design a strategic light touch restoration to restore the natural processes to that marsh so that we can keep the system functioning and resilient into the future. And this work has been further advanced by crucial involvement from the East Hampton Town Trustees and the East Hampton Planning Department, both in the early stages by volunteering themselves and their staff to the Monday morning mosquito samplers and attending our first workshops in 2021 and 2022. And more recently, when Brian Frank from the Planning Department has been helping us engage with the DEC regulators to help them understand the different approach we're taking with this project. So today, I'm starting the conversation with you to seek the town's consent and partnership to implement this work. The next slide, please. So we've been working with a group of salt marsh restoration researchers and practitioners that go by the acronym SMART teams for Salt Marsh Adaptation and Resiliency Teams. This is a partnership of practitioners, scientists, and agency personnel across the Northeast who are working together for holistic salt marsh restoration and designing new approaches that take a light touch to restore the hydrology and improve the resilience of tidal marshes, especially those that have been impacted by relict agricultural features. As we know on the east end of Long Island, and now realizing even more widespread, we have an agricultural history here that utilized these productive environments for salt hay and timothy and other things. And now, as sea level rise is accelerating, the hydrology in our marshes is causing them to not keep up with sea level rise. So we have the opportunity to take a light touch and get them on a positive elevation trajectory. Next slide. So the overall goals in Accabonac Harbor are to efficiently restore ecosystem function, change the elevation trajectory, which our research has shown is not keeping up with sea level rise, to a positive elevation trajectory so that it can keep up with sea level rise, facilitating marsh migration, reducing mosquito production and pesticide applications, supporting at-risk species such as obligate salt marsh nesting birds that are out there, and promoting climate adaptation. And this image is from one of our hands-on workshops in East Hampton from the spring of 2022. Next slide. So in Accabonac Harbor, we have a fantastic restoration opportunity to restore the many benefits that salt marshes provide for nature and people. We can switch that marsh platform trajectory from negative to positive, like I described. We can further reduce the mosquito production and pesticide application in the harbor. We can increase the native vegetation cover, facilitate migration, and provide long-term habitat for wildlife. And Accabonac Harbor is really well placed for success here because we have the long-term monitoring data, we have the historical trends analysis completed, we have future marsh migration projections calculated, we have detailed mosquito breeding maps from those Monday morning mosquito samplers, we have successful salt marsh sparrow population breeding in the marsh telling us where it's working, where it's starting to fail, and we have highly motivated partners, a proactive vector control agency, engaged government partners, and a highly engaged citizenry such as the Monday morning mosquito samplers, citizen scientists, and the Accabonac Protection Committee. So the map on the right, thank you, shows the properties around the harbor that are part of this restoration planning effort. And you can tell it looks like a patchwork quilt because our property ownerships are just that way. And so the two colors I want to draw your attention to are the red parcels that are East Hampton town-owned parcels, and the blue parcels that are the Nature Conservancy or TNC-owned parcels. And as you look at this map, you can see many places our properties abut one another. And so doing an ecological restoration in this system really suggests that we should be actively engaged partners on this. The next slide. This map you have probably seen before. It shows the trends analysis of the changes in the salt marsh from the regulatory maps created by the state in 1974 to 2005. In yellow is the high marsh habitat that doesn't get flooded as frequently, and in bright green is the low marsh habitat that gets flooded twice a day. In this time period between 1974 and 2005, we've had an 18% loss of marsh area overall. This has been a 50% reduction in the high marsh area, so 90 acres of that high marsh habitat lost. And not only is this among the highest rate of high marsh loss on Long Island in this time frame, it is twice as fast as the average loss of high marsh in the Peconic Estuary, which is 25%. We've also seen a dramatic increase in Phragmites, especially in the southern part of the harbor that you see there in blue. Next slide, please. So in addition to all the traditional ecological monitoring and scientific monitoring that normally goes into informing a restoration project, what's really cool about this project is that we are being informed by art, mosquitoes, and birds. And art, in particular, landscape paintings. Go to the next slide, please. This is a landscape painting in Newbury, Massachusetts by American painter Martin Johnson Head. This painting was completed in 1876 to 1881. And what is important about this is that we people were using our salt marshes for centuries longer than we have appreciated. As a trained coastal ecologist, my training said, and in our coastal ecology books, we think the first time that people manipulated our salt marshes was for those mosquito ditches that went in during the public works projects in 1930. But art historians knew more about this history than we coastal ecologists did, because in the 1880s, landscape painters were capturing how farmers were not only harvesting hay on these marshes, they were manipulating the way water moved into and out of these marshes to optimize the production of what they were trying to grow. They were freshening the marshes by coming up with pulverization and aboiteaux. So they were using European techniques since the 1600s here to control water flow to freshen these salt marshes. They were full sun, so great places to grow crops. They could even freshen a salt marsh by preventing the salt from coming in and allowing the fresh water to come in so they could grow higher value Timothy hay for their livestock than just salt hay. But even with the salt hay, they could increase the production from 1 ton per acre to 4 tons per acre of salt hay by manipulating the way the water flows into and out of these systems. And what these landscape painters showed was that farmers in the 17 and 1800s were not just farming on a natural landscape. They were farming on a human optimized landscape in the salt marsh. So these landscape paintings from Martin Johnson Head in the 1880s, and the art historians in the room would know, were decades before Monet's famous haystack paintings from Germany. So it's really a fun meeting of different siloed expertise. So next slide. And this is just to show that we know that the east end of Long Island was heavily farmed by colonists starting in the 1600s. We skip to the next here. And we can see the remnants of these hydrological, of the agricultural manipulations in the salt marsh today. Anytime you see some of these straight lines, they are old embankments that were used for terracing the marsh and controlling the water flow in and out of these panels of marsh to optimize their productivity. But now with accelerating sea level rise, and because these structures are not maintained, we are seeing water getting impounded on certain sections of the marsh and rotting it out from below ground. It's changing the growing conditions for these plants so the native plants can't grow their below ground biomass and keep the marsh platform up with sea level rise. So we see these structures impacting the function of the marsh today. Next slide. Here's just some more evidence that any of you who've been out in East Hampton, especially if your families have been here for generations, know the history of cattle farming. And I found a number of places in Accabonac Harbor where there must be old loading and unloading docks on the edge of the marsh. So these are not just pristine natural systems. They are human, they're social ecological systems, and that's a fantastic thing. And so it suggests to us that we people have a role to play helping them persist into the future.
It's a corduroy path.
The corduroy path, exactly. And so mosquitoes. Mosquitoes have informed these restoration designs. Citizen scientists led by the East Hampton Town trustees have mapped the breeding locations and timing of mosquitoes with a cell phone app developed by my colleague Adam Stark at the Nature Conservancy. These their data that they have generated on Monday mornings have revealed hydrological impairments causing these breeding hotspots and blocking marsh migration. So far, just knowing when and where mosquitoes are breeding and where they are not has dramatically reduced the amount of pesticide and the frequency of helicopter spraying in Accabonac Harbor. It used to be weekly from May to October, 21 weeks in a row, every Tuesday, Wednesday morning, residents would be woken up by noisy helicopters spraying. Last year, anyone want to guess how many times they sprayed? Twice. They only sprayed twice, and when they sprayed twice, they only sprayed the hot spots that were actively breeding that week. So now what we these data have also, because they've informed where these persistent mosquito breeding hotspots are, and we can see what the hydrological impairments are there now, they have informed our restoration design so that we may be able to take these mosquito breeding hotspots off the list almost entirely. So next slide. Here's a photograph of former trustee Susan McGraw-Keeber with my colleague Kevin standing out in notorious mosquito hotspot number 3. And now, knowing what you know now, you can see that linear line of Iva and higher marsh that is obstructing the connection between this marsh parcel that is rotting out behind Susan and Kevin. And anyone who was part of the Monday morning mosquito sampling is probably feeling like they're itchy right now, because you can tell that's a mosquito breeding breeding hotspot. But that line is a relict embankment from the time that Accabonac Harbor was actively farmed. And there are Peconic Estuary Partnership staff in the back there by the embankment. You can go to the next slide. This is another mosquito breeding hotspot. So that last one was on TNC property in northern Kaplan Meadows. This, my colleague Adam is standing here in the eastern part of the Nancy Kelly Preserve owned by the town of East Hampton. And you can't tell in this photo, but he's standing in a puddle of water that's breeding mosquitoes and all the larvae are buzzing around him. And when I took this photo many, many years ago, I didn't appreciate that the reason that the rainwater is accumulating here at this end of the Nancy Kelly Preserve is that there is an earthen embankment to the right of your screen that is blocking the connection between that coastal meadow and the coastal salt marsh. And now the town of East Hampton purchased the Nancy Kelly Preserve property and the residential property adjacent to it, in part for open space preservation, but also for marsh migration potential. And this earthen berm that is causing the mosquito breeding hotspot to be there is also blocking marsh migration through that coastal open space that was purchased for that, in part for that purpose. Next slide. It's hard to see the map here, but what this shows is 11 mosquito breeding hotspots in black hashed polygons on the map, and the restoration designs that we are proposing for the Accabonac Harbor system. And these restoration designs tap into all of those mosquito breeding hotspots. So next slide. And many of those mosquito breeding hotspots are at the upper edges of the marsh, also connecting to where our models project we're going to have marsh migration into the future. So in hot pink in this slide, you can see over 80 acres of marsh migration potential around Accabonac Harbor under a 3-foot sea level rise. So next. Birds. So salt marsh sparrows, we talked about when I met with you last year. They are an extreme salt marsh specialist. They are endemic to the east coast of the US. They exist nowhere else in the world except on the east coast of the US. They spend their entire lives in salt marshes. They even build their nests in the intertidal zone, and that makes them, they're so specialized, but they are a really good indicator of when they're doing well. They tell us that our marsh is doing well, both for them, other birds, and all of the things we want our marsh to do for us. And so we can go to the next slide. And their population is declining. They are under consideration for the endangered species list because flooding of the marsh platform that's not keeping up with sea level rise is their leading cause of population declines of flooding nests. So these extreme salt marsh specialist birds are telling us there is a problem with our marsh. This photo is of a hatchling from the Merrill Lake Sanctuary in Accabonac Harbor from 2023. Success for these sparrows suggests that level of coastal resilience with the capacity to support a diversity of species and all of the functions we want the marsh to do for us. And we like to say that these sparrows are the canaries in the coal mine. And we are now the farmers in the marsh to help them and to help ourselves by protecting these habitats. Next slide. So the last time I spoke with you, it was a work session Tuesday, July 8th last year. And I told you these birds are so secretive. After having studied them and sampling the flying adults since 2011, I had never found one of their secret nests, one of their hidden nests out in the salt marsh. But the very next morning, I was out in Kaplan Meadows in this spot here. It's not far from that mosquito hotspot number 3. And there I found my first nest. So you can go to the next slide. So on Wednesday, July 9th last summer, I found a gorgeous little nest. It's probably only about 2.5, 3 inches across, and it had 4 speckled eggs in it. 5 days later, my team went back to the site and found those hatchlings. They had just hatched. In fact, when they first showed up on site, one had hatched and there were 3 eggs. And at the end of their sampling that day, they peeked back and they saw all 4 eggs had hatched. Next slide. This, I don't think was going to play the video, but Jade Blanau from the Peconic Estuary Partnership was one of my team that morning, and she was just amazed at how tiny these little birds are. So she said, I didn't think they were going to be that small. The next slide. Oh, it is playing, but maybe. All right, so small, she says. You can read her lips. Then you'll be able to see, this is great. Down in those grasses, you can see how these nests are so hard to find. And those little chicks with their yellow rimmed beaks are saying that this is the target for the mommy bird, put food here. So you can advance to the next slide. And the next day in Napeague Harbor, we found a nest full of hatchlings that were a few days older, and so they're old enough to band. And so you can see in the hands on the right, the first bling that those birds are wearing. They're unique ID bands, so that when they come back, we can catch them again, figure out how they're doing. So next slide. So the techniques that we're using for this light touch restoration are referred to by the Massachusetts Department of Natural Resources as the trio. There's basically 3 techniques that we're looking to use. The first is ditch remediation to restore single channel hydrology to the marsh, to get rid of all of those linear, what we have been calling mosquito ditches, but they're overlaid on agricultural ditches, so that the water can all come into the marsh through a single dendritic branching channel with the energy enough to deliver the suspended sediments to the surface of the marsh instead of clogging the mosquito ditches. You can imagine the volume of water coming in has a certain amount of energy, it keeps sediment suspended, but if that energy and water is split 10, 12 different ways to go through 10, 12 different linear mosquito ditches, the water slows down, the sediments fall out of suspension, and it starts to clog, instead of delivering those sediments up onto the surface of the marsh. And so it also relieves of oxidative subsidence by having too many cuts in this organic rich peat that we want to be sequestering carbon, not releasing it to the atmosphere. The second technique is runnels. These are shallow drainage features. They are not new ditches, but they are shallower and wider, and they just drain enough water, because even though the salt marsh grasses can grow in the intertidal zone, they cannot grow fully submerged. So when the tide goes out, the water table needs to drop enough so that the plants can use oxygen to pull the nutrients out of the water and soil and grow and do their thing. Runnels are also used for breaking through those barrier embankments to facilitate marsh migration, or to facilitate connection to those mosquito hotspot areas at the upper edges of the marsh. And the third technique that will be used here is creating microtopography, so beneficial reuse of the marsh peat that's cut out, usually by shovels, to make tiny marsh mounds, or just slightly elevated habitat patches, so these birds can find successful places to build their nests. And finally, the fourth, not included in the trio, is an innovative Phragmites control approaches, which is strategically designing the channels and using channels that will have fresh water from the land come out into the bay instead of staying trapped on the marsh and fueling that dense, high growth Phragmites, and allowing the salt water to come in to push the Phragmites back. So the next slide. So that ditch remediation, the graphics on the left show how before the ditch is treated, the groundwater is lower below the surface, and it allows oxygen to degrade the marsh peat. So you can go ahead and advance to the next slides. This is great. I didn't know that my slides were going to be moving like this. The ditch remediation is done by mowing. That's great. The thatch or the grass at the end of the growing season on the sides of the ditches that we want to essentially slowly erase. The grass is mowed, and then it is raked into the ditches that we want to retire. And the dark colors in bands and the second graphic you can see show that this will be done over a series of 3 years. And it essentially uses the material that naturally builds the marsh peat to rebuild the peat. So the peat grows itself from the bottom up. And when the elevation is sufficient, the marsh grasses will colonize the top of those, and essentially their roots and rhizomes below ground will weave themselves together into the adjacent peat, creating a near perfect match for the peat that's there.
So you're essentially trying to prevent root rot.
Yeah, it is exactly trying to prevent root rot, and it's changing. So these are some pictures showing the treated ditch with ditch remediation on the left side and the reference or untreated ditch on the right, and you can see that the ditch on the left is slowly disappearing as the peat and the plants are able to grow itself back together.
And do you have a count of the ditch, how many ditches there are in total?
We do. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's in the calculations of the plans, yes. So next slide. The second technique, sort of runnels, to relieve the opposite problem where there are areas that it's overdrained and areas that are underdrained in the marsh, where we're getting these expanding unvegetated pans on the surface of the marsh. We would use runnels to have that shallow drainage so that when the tide goes out, the water goes all the way out and lets the plants have growing conditions there. There are photos on the right. Those are the plants respond very fast to the runnel placements. This picture, I think, is 3.5 years between a fully impounded area on the surface of the marsh being fully vegetated by native grasses. The next slide. So another example from the coast of Rhode Island, which, like our area, has a very small tidal range. You can see the towers in the background, or the trees in the background, showing these same two places just a few years after drainage, natural revegetation of that area. So next, another example. You can skip past that. And this is where, at the end of the Nancy Kelly Preserve, you can see that dead patch of grass. That's where the water tends to accumulate after a rainfall and breed mosquitoes. A runnel cut through that elevated earthen berm between the marsh and the coastal meadow will relieve that mosquito breeding hotspot and connect the marsh to over 8 acres of marsh migration potential. The next slide. This is just demonstrating that very same thing. You can go to the next slide. And structured microtopography. So the runnels are dug mostly by shovel, by hand, but in some places where they're long, we could bring in light machinery to do that digging. And those shovelfuls of marsh peat are placed in small clumps on the surface of the marsh so that those areas don't flood with every high tide every day, and so the birds have a little bit of refuge to build their nests. And you can see, after this is just 1 year later, the high marsh grasses have grown over the surface of that microtopography mound. And I think at this spot, the sparrows haven't found it yet, but the willets have. And I think in other locations, the sparrows have found these marsh mounds to build their nests. Next. So onto the designs. We are proposing a phased approach to implementing these designs, and I'll share some of the examples of the restoration designs with you. I believe will have the application packages complete by the end of this week. But for the northern and central part of Accabonac Harbor, we're calling that phase 1, where we would address the restoration over the next 5 years. And circled in red is the western part of the Merrill Lake Sanctuary, adjacent to the Nancy Kelly Preserve, that we are seeing as our first implementation, phase 1, that we expect to implement as soon as we have permits in place. So next slide. This is the full marsh complex. It's about 250 acres of publicly owned and publicly accessible parcels within Accabonac Harbor. And those areas are numbered 1 through 11, I believe. Next slide. This is the example of the East Hampton-owned parcel at the northern end of Accabonac Harbor inside of Girard Drive. It's all red because it's all owned by the town of East Hampton. You can go to the next slide. These orange lines are our proposed access paths for doing the restoration techniques that we plan to do on that property. The next slide. This shows the historical agricultural embankments that my team, Smart Teams, has identified out in that parcel in the northern part of the harbor. And we are not looking to erase all of these old agricultural footprints. We're seeking to identify them so we can understand the landscape that we're working with, so that we can strategically design light touch restoration approaches in those areas. So the next slide. These short lines that you see are the actual places that we're planning to do restoration, and they are color-coded by what's planned to happen there, whether it's shallow runnels or the ditch remediation, mowing and laying grasses into the ditches to retire the ones that we want to have heal themselves from the bottom up. The next slide. This, it's hard to see in this color, but the dark blue on the black and white image shows where the resulting water courses are going to be. This is, even though it looks like there are a lot of channels there, this is single channel hydrology through tide sheds, which are like a watershed, but within the intertidal marsh. And next. Okay, so that was the example for the East Hampton parcel to the north. This example shows the same series of images in red, 63.324.4. You can see the Nancy Kelly Preserve in red and TNC's Merrill Lake Sanctuary in light blue. To the next slide. These are the access paths we're proposing in that region. So next slide. These are the agricultural embankments that we have detected out there. It suggests really overwintering of cattle, which seems to fit with the history that we've been hearing about in that area. And I see you nodding, that's great.
Our historian concurs.
Yeah, the original 13 settlers, they all got land here, on this preserve, and also George. Anyway,
yeah, I'd love to chat with you about that some more. That's super.
Grazing lands.
They were given land here in the salt marshes?
They got the houses. They got the houses down James Lane, and they got cattle and areas in the plains of Georgia and the plains of Accabonac.
Absolutely, that's great. So it fits with what we're finding, the signatures we're finding in the marsh. So next slide. This shows of the very light, the minimal restoration techniques, actions that we propose for these areas to restore that single channel hydrology and connect to the coastal meadow. And next slide. To restore a single channel hydrology through here. Next slide. And so that's what I've sort of brought to share with you today. In sum, this light touch restoration approach for Accabonac Harbor is really at the forefront of restoration science, of thinking about how the marsh works, and we're restoring it forward. We're restoring the natural processes that will help the marsh maintain itself into the future. And so this is restoring natural processes. It's not re-engineering the marsh. And so we value the town's continued collaboration on this and partnership to steward this valuable resource that we both treasure. So thank you, and I look forward to sort of getting this implemented once we figure out our permitting structure and way to go. I'm happy to take any questions about the approach, the restoration designs, the rationale, and Will Bowman from Land Use Ecological Services, who's walking our permits through, is online to answer any permit-related questions. So thank you.
So the request of the town right now is to allow for the use of the town land to try to restore this, and you would need our approval as a landowner for any type of permitting for DEC permitting or consistency, LWRP consistency.
Yes, and so for this project, we're looking to submit a joint permit between the Nature Conservancy and the town of East Hampton for that joint permit from the DEC and the Army Corps of Engineers. And it makes sense because our properties are adjacent to one another, and the ecological restoration would be across those borders.
And then who's funding it? Are we looking to use our water quality money to fund it, or are you?
At this point, I'm not asking for any funding from the town, but staff time to help us when we're out there with shovels and rakes and mowers would be fantastic. We have, the Nature Conservancy has funded sort of the first round of designs. There is a Suffolk County Capital Fund grant that the Peconic Estuary Partnership is stewarding now for finalizing these designs and for seeking permits. And that's sort of where we are now. And I have an EPA watershed development grant that will fund the first implementation of this project. And it's going to start with a 2-day hands-on implementation workshop where the trustees or any citizen scientists who want to come out with us and learn how to use the mowers and the rakes and shovels to implement these designs and help us monitoring them, we've got sort of funding to cover that. And from that first implementation phase, we'll learn how much people power does it take and how long does it take us to put in certain lengths of runnels and ditch remediation. And down the road, there may be sort of a request for sort of funding to help bring town folks out and implement on your properties or with us on ours. Probably mostly on your property, asking the town for help on your properties. But at this point, that's not what we're asking for. We're trying to get the permits approved and sort of make sure that people in the town are aware of this collaborative project that we've been planning and is on the horizon.
So I'm going to go with a long answer to get to my short answer, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First of all, your energy and your knowledge is infectious, a little overwhelming, which is amazing then too. And to show the history in all of the phased approaches to getting the information to us here is great. I've spent hundreds of hours, if not thousands, paddling in the creek. And all through there. I mean, there's not a touch in there that I don't know. And I've always wondered when I'm going to get to this point to hear a person that wants to do this. Okay, an organization that wants to take this on, because it is a large investment of time on their energy and effort on there. But the science approach that you're doing this right now, it's something I've been waiting 9 years on the board to hear. And, I wish you the best, and I completely support it. I like how you're doing the phased approach down at the Nancy Kelly Preserve, the former Maloney property that we purchased, where we removed a lot of the bamboo in that area. Also, then too, it also shows how man, and human being try to manipulate the land for their own use, so that they can survive out here. It's not bad at the time, but we're recognizing it did have long generational effects that we have to restore or re-nurture. And I think the creek here is a perfect place to start. I'm very happy that you chose East Hampton for this also then too. The north side, be very interested to see if the trustees ever were going to take the initiative to pull back the water and see what, get the water flow underneath the bridge anymore on there. There were benefits in that area for clamming at that time, for filtering. I do like the approach you're saying to try to push back the Phragmites on there by pulling in the salt water into those areas, and where the poor water, the fresh water is coming in, and it is just feeding on them too. How can we use the natural tidal influences to try to push back Phragmites? Because unfortunately, it changes the salt marshes, as you're discussing then too. I think one of the places you might want to look for some citizen scientists is our high school. Sorry, am I taking that from you?
I just wrote notes to myself.
Dr. Stephanie Forsberg, Dr. Talmadge Stephanie Forsberg. She has a great initiative program with Dr. Rubito also, where this might be something that you might get a citizen scientist from the high school for 3 years on there, and multiple ones. It's a wonderful program that they run. She's a former East Hampton Town trustee also. I don't really have much to say, and I'm not supporting here, and let me know how else I can help. And that's
Thank you so
my
much.
long story to get a short thing. Very happy to see you again.
Wonderful. Nice to see you too. And thank you for that, for providing that historical context and for your enthusiasm to see this harbor sort of restored.
But it's still a jewel.
Yes, oh, it absolutely is. And that's sort of.
But we're going to keep making it even better. Yeah.
And by acting sooner rather than later, we can use a lighter touch to set it on a positive trajectory.
Sure. Thank you.
So it's such an important project as for restoring the harbor to where it was historically, but you've touched on it a number of times in your rationale, and that is we need places for our salt marshes to migrate to. And because of climate change, we're having issues with the natural reoccurrence of our salt marshes. And if you would just lightly just let folks know why salt marshes are so important and what they do for us, particularly with flooding, and why this project, it is well done in the way that you're explaining it, but also critical to fight the impacts of the climate crisis that we're surrounded by in this town. So hearing you talk about that and the impacts of sea level rise, and that the marsh can no longer meet it and continue is such an important rationale for me for any project. I'm supportive of it, obviously, but that rationale is critical, I believe, as well, for our whole community.
Thank you so much. So you wanted me to describe how, yeah, sure. So in addition to sort of fueling our coastal food web and being sort of valuable resources for nature, salt marshes are important for climate adaptation for two main reasons. One of which, as they grow vertically, because ideally they find that Goldilocks height, they're growing fast enough to keep up with sea level rise, they're trapping organic matter and carbon, and they're sequestering carbon in their marsh peat to alleviate future acceleration of climate change. But in the shorter term, these grasses growing across these extensive marshes slow down storm surges and flooding along our coastline, trapping sediments and attenuating that wave energy so that the flooding is not as severe and doesn't have the wave damage that it would if those salt marshes were not present. So those are the two main ways that a healthy, firm, solid salt marsh that is building and keeping pace with our current sea level rise conditions can protect coastal development and people in the future.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this project forward. I first heard about the need to do this. I didn't know about these salt hay farming, but from the ditches during the Depression that were created, from Seal Downs in Accabonac Protection Committee 20 years ago. And it seemed at that time she was searching for, through the local newspapers, the Star, for pictures to be able to show how it was before, to be able to access some kind of ability to even have scientists come and look at it. So the fact that we're so far ahead right now, I know she's smiling down upon us. And so this has been a project that it's been in the minds of people in Springs for over 20 years, to my knowledge. So again, thank you. And I love the light approach. I think it's the best approach.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing up Seal Downs. My very first presentation when I joined the Nature Conservancy 20 years ago was at the invitation of Seal Downs in her living room to the Accabonac Protection Committee. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a great project. I think we learned about this a little bit, but was more salt marsh sparrow based before.
Exactly.
I also was lucky enough to have Brian Frank and Morgan Slater give me an overview, I think, of a previous meeting with you that went over this. And I really appreciate all the thought that has gone into this, but also action. So the light hand is great, realizing that we're talking about very small gradients. I'm not a hydrologist, but I gather that the work that needs to be done, if it's well thought out, is, like you said, you can take a light hand and make a big difference. So, fewer mosquitoes, a healthier environment, healthier habitat, that's a pretty easy sell. So I think the town is very, very happy to support this project. I also think it's important to note that the fewer mosquitoes is resulting in less spraying, and people from, I think, the town trustees, Accabonac Protection Committee, and others have done a lot of volunteering to test that area, and you touched on that, but I think it's important to recognize that that has led to really good results, which is, I don't remember the exact number of sprayings that you said were happening last year, but way reduced.
2 versus 21.
Yeah.
Because I get those reports every week, and I'm afraid to open it because, we put it out on social media so that folks know where, Suffolk County Vector Control is spraying. And folks also have to understand that we don't have a say in the matter. And that's why, I have had community members come to me and say, why can't the program that you're doing on Accabonac Harbor be translated to Beach Hampton or to other areas where they're spraying, because we're getting such good results
It's
here in
because
Springs.
of residents of the town of East Hampton and the trustees. They are putting in the legwork that is required to generate the data that Suffolk County Vector Control does not have without your help. And so it's really the active citizens and trustees and town staff from the planning department, Mike Delalio and Sam Klein, and residents like Edwina Von Gall, who were out there Monday mornings collecting that data, making this possible. That's the bottleneck. And that's why it took so many years to get here until legislator Bridget Fleming said, find a solution to the impasse between the environmentalists saying don't spray and Suffolk County Vector Control saying our risk assessment says we have to spray, because otherwise we'd miss the opportunity to stop human vector-borne disease in time. And so this is that data. It's that people power that your community has provided that made this possible.
And we know that spraying just doesn't impact mosquitoes. We know it impacts very important species for our existence, our fish stocks, the birds. So cutting that down is essential as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, I just want to conclude just to say this. I think, we have a difficult job. There's a lot of challenges we face, and we certainly don't have all of the answers. But I think that this project and this presentation sort of highlights some of what's really beautiful about the town. We have an environment, and I mean, Accabonac Harbor is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And then we have people who care about it. To hear Brian, Frank, and Morgan, how passionate they were after hearing your presentation outside of town and relay it to me was really encouraging, just how excited they were, the trustees, the work that I think they've really driven that mosquito larva testing and other volunteers. So I very, very great presentation. I'm very excited to see it go forward. I also just want to mention, speaking of, people who care about East Hampton and resources, LTV, the local TV station, has a lot of old archives, and maybe they've got something that will deal with salt marshes, because certainly this would have been an area that would be, appealing for a long, long time. So I'll look into that, and if I can find anything to share, I'll do that. But
that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so it sounds like we've given you a lot of good leads.
The high school students.
That program, if you haven't met Dr. Stephanie Forsberg, I mean, that's, David knows it's a program it's a 3-year program, isn't it?
Yeah.
They start, the young people start as sophomores and they pick a project to work on, and they work on it for 3 years, and it's a research project. And a lot of it, young people, are picking projects that pertain to our community, our environment, climate change. And it's remarkable, the research that they've done, and they need to be working with a mentor, someone, and, so it would be great as a climate scientist, coastal scientist, maybe it's something that you could bring some of the students along.
I would love to tap into them.
And I'm happy to send you Dr. Forsberg's email.
That'd be great.
We can
Thank
send that from our office.
And then you decide this is what they should get their degrees in.
Absolutely wonderful.
That's
their
it.
careers in, which is win, 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 win.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Nicole, I did send your presentation to the Accabonac Protection Committee last night, so they had it.
Excellent.
Got representation here today, so that, because I know how important this is it's their raison d'etre, right? Is the
Absolutely.
Accabonac Harbor. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we're moving right along. Next up is our Housing Director, Mark Morgan Perez, and we're going to discuss the ADU construction loan pilot program recommendation. Welcome, Mark.
Nice to see everyone again.
Hi, Mark.
Okay, so I'm here with updates to the ADU construction assistance program, which is funded by the Community Housing Fund. The recommendations are very similar to ones that we had previously. Would you like me to give a program overview?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the proposal is basically to have 10 construction assistance loans, each in the amount of $100,000, or up to, I should say, $100,000. And the idea is that these would fund residents to build accessory dwelling units. The people who, the owners of the homes would have to have the home as their primary residence. The tenants of the ADUs would have to have the ADU as their sole legal residence. Leases would be for a minimum of 1 year. There's no restrictions on the incomes of the owners. Tenant incomes would be restricted by the Community Housing Fund law in the amount of $197,880 for households that are one or two people, and up to $230,860 for households of 3 to 4 people, which is basically approximately 150% and 140% AMI. The funds would be, again, it would be a loan, interest-free, could be combined with other grants and loans, would be repayable upon the sale of the property. What else? Basically, the idea would be to launch the program. The recommendation would be to launch the program as soon as we can, assuming that's acceptable to the town board. The proposed rollout would be to have the application materials ready and posted on OHCD's website around June 22nd. We would be accepting applications for a 30-day window. OHCD would do a preliminary screening of the applications, and then the idea would be to have a public lottery to establish the order in which eligible applications could be reviewed. I've submitted all of the application and ancillary documents for your review, and I'd love to hear what you think about the program, the rollout timeline, and any improvements we could make to it.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I am very supportive of this program, and I can't wait to get it launched. I also want to recognize, we've spoken about this a few times in terms of the big picture and the guidelines, income requirements, things like that. I just want to publicly acknowledge how much more work goes into a program like this and getting ready for launch. Mark Morgan Perez, Joanne, Ed Reale, I've asked a lot of you over the recent weeks to get this ready, and I appreciate all your work that has gone into that. Originally, I was not thinking of this being a lottery because I wanted to get it launched and thought it first come, first serve. I think that there's now a thought that there will be quite a bit of interest. And so the idea there, I did ask them, Office of Housing, to prepare a potential timeline so that we knew when this could be ready to get put online. And there's a 30-day window opening. I've spoken with some of you about this, since it's been distributed, and we might want to extend that a little bit. But the reason we had a lottery to begin with is because if there's more than 10 applicants, we didn't want somebody who heard about this first to have a totally unfair advantage, and somebody who 1 week from now applied was already number 11 or something like that. That said, I want to balance that with the need to get it launched so we can start helping to fund actual projects. But the 30-day window, we'll hear what the board has to say. I'd be happy to extend that a little bit. And the idea would be, if we don't fill all 10 loans, we don't find 10 eligible people, I would propose that we keep the program going on a rolling basis. At that point, it'll be public knowledge that it's out there. And so I don't think we would need to take as much care to make sure that, we were fair to everybody at the same time. But I think that's the point of a pilot program, is to be determined. Whatever the period is, we'll launch this hopefully, and then see what the interest is. And frankly, if there's a lot of interest, I think we should talk about potentially additional funding, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I also, some of the details that have come up, we do have technically only 8 places left, 8 ADUs left in the town of East Hampton. We have a 40...
In the East Hampton School District.
East Hampton School District. We have a 40 ADU cap in each of the school districts, and that is the one with the most ADUs. I think Mark has those numbers. Springs is second with, I think, 14 spots available. So just want to acknowledge that, something to consider in case all 10 applicants come from.
Does that, I don't remember, does that, if we want to change the cap, is that by board resolution or public hearing?
I believe by board resolution, but I don't.
Or is it codified? A resolution? Okay.
I can look into that and confirm. There were a couple of small details that have come up to add, that actually Joanne Pilgrim sent these around. Just for clarity, for example, letting people know that there's a limit to 90% of mortgage financing on this. We don't want somebody to be over leveraged and, borrow more money, and this 100,000 puts them over what they really own or equity in the house. So there's a place to add that. And then also clarifying just some details that are already codified, but in the interest of full information, the properties need to be a minimum of 15,000 square feet. Again, that's already the law, but there was a suggestion to add that. So it's very, very clear in the application. And that's all I have for now. I might have more comments after others potentially have questions, but I thank everybody who's involved in this. I think ADUs are going to be a very important piece to our big affordable housing problem. And I think that the CH funds and making these loans available as soon as possible will be a big step in the right direction.
Thank you. And I also want to second what Ian said. Joanne Pilgrim's work and Ed Reale's work on this was great. It was really heavy lift, and everyone rose to the occasion and did a great job. For some clarification on statistics, of the permits available for ADUs, about 68% are still remaining. So it's really only East Hampton, which is sort of reaching the limit, but there are 38 left of 40 in Amagansett.
I'm sorry, can we just, if you could just give us the numbers, that would be helpful.
Sure. Of the number available?
Yeah, no, the number of, I'd rather not available. I'd rather have the absolute number that have been built or in the process of being built.
There are 69 permits that have been issued, and there are 131 available, up to 200.
Okay, so we said East Hampton has already had 32 permits?
It's either 31 or 32. I have to confirm that number. So there's either 8 or 9
Okay,
available.
and how many has Springs done?
Springs has done 25, and there's 15 available.
Okay, what about Amagansett?
2, and there's 38 available.
Montauk?
9 and 31 available.
And Wainscott?
2 and 38 available.
Okay. Got it.
Yes, I'm glad to, my concern was actually the dates between the program launch. This is on the first page of your memo, and the date the application period closes, because a month, I know if folks have gone for a HELOC or refinance their house, getting all those supporting materials ready can take a while, particularly when you have to go to someplace, an agency or your job to get that information that's going to be required. Sometimes the turnaround time can be longer than you would think it would be. So I'm glad that people their application wouldn't get tossed if the time period was a little longer for people to provide those. I know that in getting a HELOC, because I've recently applied for one, they always have to do extensions because you could never get the documentation back in time. So whether we do extensions for existing applications or however you want to handle that, I just think that time period's too short. I think everything's really well done and really well thought out for this, as we can when we're creating something new. The only other comment that I had, and I don't even know if this is a necessity, is there a requirement for either a mortgage insurance or a homeowner's insurance for protection of folks if something happens to the unit and it's not habitable and they can't pay their mortgages or this loan anymore? That's my only question. I didn't see that as a list in the pre-construction costs, so I was wondering if there's any kind of requirement.
So if you could get to so you're on the mic, Ed.
We also have a note and mortgage that goes with this. There's going to be a mortgage filed to secure the $100,000. It's going to be subordinate to people's main mortgage and to their HELOC if they get one too. But there is a requirement in those documents, like in any mortgage, that it remain insured. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my only concern, that people would not be able, if God forbid something happened to the property, people would be burdened with paying it without any insurance. Other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing this program get started.
So I think the application is very clean. A couple of small additions, as you just mentioned, that'd be great, Mark. I do also agree if we could, for the initial one right now, to roll out immediately, as Ian would like to see, but if we can extend that maybe to 60 days, I think for the first time, that'd be a great start. I like the lottery part. I hope we get to a point where it's needed. But again, a lot of this, I look at how it was the first couple of years of the CPF water quality. in which, we didn't know what was going to be coming in or not then too. And the way it all worked out really well, I think it would the same we'll do here. And then we can, after this first 60 days and the first amounts go out, if they are all doled out, we'll have that discussion. That might be a good discussion, if we get to that in the fall on there then too. But I don't mind reassessing it. I don't have many other questions. Ed, Joanne, Mark, I think you did a very well job on this application. You answered all the concerns that I had on here specifically through the last previous discussions. And Ian, thank you for shepherding it.
So John, if you could go to page 4 in the deck. So Mark, I know you've basically thought of everything, right? So you've got the program overview, the application, and then there are 9 attachments. So what documents need to be supplied to be, to have your application in and either be entered in the lottery if that's necessary?
Only up to attachment 4. Everything else is later in the process.
Okay. So when you, in part 1 of the application, the applicant and property information. So you're asking folks if their property has a valid certificate of occupancy for all structures. And then, so they just have to check yes or no. And then it looks like it's on the Office of Community Housing and Development that then go to the building department and pull the C of O. So we don't want to ask folks to do that themselves. You guys, your department, your staff is going to do that.
The goal is to confirm what the applicant has stated.
So is that going to require an inspection to make sure that the C of O that's on file is updated?
I don't think it's an inspection. Let me ask.
Well, because the thing is, we don't know what the interest is going to be here, and so what we tried to balance was, getting all the information we need from the applicants, but not necessarily reviewing every application in a full way. If we have 90 applications, but only 10 loans to give, I wouldn't want to have 90 inspections. So the idea is we want the confirmation from them, and as the process goes, once the lottery happens, that'll be placed, and presumably there may be applications that don't actually get these at the end because there's some issue that comes on as we get into the full vetting. So
the intent at that point was just kind of a cursory verification by our office that the property would be eligible, and I was anticipating using the records in Govern, which would confirm the property size met the minimum and that there was a C of O on file. They're obviously going to have to deal with the building department with all of those details when they submit for a permit, but just in order to verify that the application should go to the next step and be part of the lottery.
Okay.
And we have timelines for the issuance of a building permit and the CO so that anybody who, has somehow an illegal pool and gotten this wouldn't get the loan. I think there's ways to vet this out as the process moves forward without burdening the housing department. I mean, there's going to be a lot of work that goes into this for sure, but instead of reviewing, again, 90 applications in detail, it's making sure that people know exactly what the expectations are, and they have to agree that that's what they're going to do. And it's, trust but verify.
Right. I guess it's a balance between, how much work is going to be for the department. I mean, this sounds like a lot of work if we get 90 applications that have to go through. So, just trying to balance, the workload. So question then, so attachment 2, you're asking folks to put in what their, gross annual income is and whether they work full time or not. And then attachment 3 is any non-wage income. So at this point, we're not asking folks to give their tax return. We're going, basically on the honor system, right? And then is it later on in the process where you're actually verifying what their income is, or is this the step that verifies their income?
We are asking them to submit documents. On attachment 2, I should clarify that we are requesting that documentation. It's actually on attachment 1. We state in 5A, income verification, look at attachment 2, and then we do request current employment and income verification documents for the property owner and spouse. So that is listed on attachment 1. Attachment 2 was just more of a sheet to kind of list it separately so we could see it all in one spot.
Okay.
Sorry, Mark, there was one question I didn't ask. It was about if a grant was actually given to a property owner and they don't complete the task, is there a time frame to complete the installation of the ADU, or is there a request for a certain amount of time frame extension on there?
Yes, the time frames that we outlined was basically that a building permit must be obtained and submitted to OHCD within 6 months of the loan approval, and then construction must be completed and a C of O issued within 30 months of the loan approval date.
30 months.
30 months of the loan approval date.
Construction completed within 30
Correct.
months.
2.5 years.
It's a little generous, but okay.
Well, we're asking for a CO, and so that there was a lot of talk that went into that, and the idea was if it takes you 6 months to get a building permit because you're making the plans, because we don't want to require full plans that cost people money. They need an estimate from a contractor. But you have 6 months to get your building permit, and then assuming you took all 6 months, you have 2 years to build it and get a CO. There was a lot of conversation about the appropriate time frame with concerns both about, are these going to be constructed fast enough and giving people a realistic amount of time. So certainly open to discussion there.
I said generous, but overall, let's go with it because we can always come back to it. And it's the same thing as the pilot program. Let's see how this works. If we need to tighten it, we loosen it up. That's what could be January 26th type of thing. But yeah, I'm going to I want to get this going, but at the same time, want to make sure it's, it doesn't hold things out. I know even going back to the water quality, sometimes there's hundreds of thousands of dollars out there that don't get enacted upon on there. And it takes up even more valuable time of your office and funding that could go to other locations too.
Well, that was certainly
my little cynical.
No, that was certainly a concern, but in another part, and these are all really good questions because they're things that we talked a lot about. We also wanted to make sure that if there's going to be a contract, and so we didn't want to put a shorter timeline that triggered something in the contract, because we weren't sure of the timelines. I hope that people who get these loans are going to want to build it and house whoever they need to house or rent it for income. So. And just one other thing to the income verification, the idea was to make sure people knew and understood and declared what their income was, but there will be a future verification of that we outsource. And as long as everybody agrees with that, that's what I would think should happen. But that step I didn't think made sense before we knew who the first 10 eligible applicants are, because we don't want to, this is a town outsourcing that we do. We'd rather do it for somebody who is actually ready to get the loan as opposed to just somebody who applied for it.
David, I just wanted to mention in terms of the question about the time frame, that's also tied to the way we've built in progress payments on the loan. So presumably someone will have they'll be motivated to get the project done because the payments are only made at certain progress points that they'll have to tell us that they've reached and show what they've spent to date. So,
yeah, I thought that was very, sorry, I apologize. I thought that was very reasonable time frames that you gave people, and it's sustainable. I'm good with it.
And then the payments are going to the homeowner, right? And then they're turning around and paying their contractors or subcontractors.
I just have one more quick question. On page 4, part F, annual rental permit, the second bullet, to obtain your ADU rental permit, you must submit a temporary certificate of occupancy from the building department. I don't know that we have temporary certificates of occupancy, do we?
The way that the program now works is sort of a checks and balances that when someone reaches the end of their ADU project, rather than getting a full C of O, because they are required to get a rental permit. So the building department will issue a temporary C of O. We have a shared database, and so our department will then know that that's been issued. making the person eligible for their permit, so they come to us for the permit. And once the permit is issued, the building department goes back and issues the final C of O because they know that they've complied with that aspect of the requirement.
And that tracks with all other ADUs. That
Yeah,
was-
thanks.
And when we did OpenGov 2.0, we put in, right, there's a box you can check if you're doing an ADU because affordable housing gets expedited, correct?
Yeah, I don't know if it's its own bucket, but there's a box to check that
Right.
alerts the building department because this, like other affordable housing projects, are prioritized.
Timed, yeah.
And also just, to wrap this up, this is a very good conversation and I appreciate it. It's very difficult to strike the balance, and this is the balance I was trying to strike of, fiduciary responsibility and making sure a $100,000 loan is significant. We don't have unlimited CH funds, but also, being as user-friendly as possible. We want everyday, ordinary people to be able to do this and go through a process that makes sense. And I think a lot of effort went into making this program work that way. And full disclosure, it's not going to be perfect. I hope it's successful and we do it again next year. There are going to be changes to make. And if there are, that can be on me for not getting it totally perfect, but I think that this is a really good foundation to what I think will be a successful pilot program and very important for the town.
So I have just two comments, and I agree with you, Ian, is we're launching this at the time where our working families are the busiest, right? We're people are working 6 days a week, 2 jobs, and that's my only concern about the timing. 60 days is better than 30 days, but it's basically you got July and August to get this application together when folks have got kids out of school and there's just a lot for folks to manage. My other question, and Ed, I don't know if you know the answer to this, when we first set this program up and we put caps for the 5 school districts, we didn't include Sag Harbor. And I know we've used Community Housing Fund money in Sag Harbor when we gave a grant to the East Hampton Housing Authority for $1.5 million for 109 Hampton Street. So if I live on the east side of Division Street, and I know the village has their own ADU code, am I eligible for a CHF construction loan for an ADU? And I know we may not have the answer to that today, but that's just
I
something.
think that's a town board policy question.
Okay.
I think if you do make Sag Harbor School District, eastern part, the East Hampton part, we probably would have to impose our rules on what qualifies as an ADU. I mean, in Sag Harbor, you could put an ADU on a postage stamp. We're not agreeing to that. So I think if you agree to extend it to that school district, this program, I think we'd have to be using the ADU, other rules for ADUs and apply it to the Sag Harbor ADU, if you follow that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look into that more. Honestly, since I've been on the board, we haven't changed sort of the ADU, that part of it. And so I hadn't thought of it, but it's a very good point. I'll look into the details because if we can do something to support, East Hampton part of Sag Harbor, great.
And I think we're going to be probably bringing back a conversation, hopefully next month on, are we looking to increase the cap for certain school districts? My thought when we went from 20 to 40 is that we should have done it on a weighted basis because, some school districts have more parcels, housing units than others, and that should be part of the matrix. So maybe we could work with planning and figure out how many parcels are in each school district and if it makes sense to do it weighted. I remember Tom saying when we discussed it last time that, for the next round, we should probably maybe look at that since you've only got 2 in Amagansett and Wainscott. They're smaller school districts. The big ones are East Hampton and Springs. And that's where the need and the demand has been.
I just wanted to add a point of clarification. As board members have mentioned, there's various factors that go into a decision about how long to keep the application period open. But Kate, you mentioned, the time it might take to get a HELOC, et cetera. Those steps would not be required to get your application in. That's kind of the next stage. So the initial application is fairly simple. I mean, it will require kind of digging up your mortgage documents and your income documents, but the banking part of it that could take a considerable amount of time wouldn't have to be within that application period.
And again, that is a trying to strike the balance of making sure we have the information that we need so that we're not wasting people's time. They know the requirements that are going to be, asked of them. But instead of all of them having to get that information and submit it when they're applicant number 70 after the lottery, we don't want to waste their time through that. So everything has an initial step, and the application, the complete application, is not that onerous. But to everyone's point, 30 days isn't very long. So are we comfortable launching this, on the 22nd? And then if so, should we move it 60 days or more than that?
Well, it is the busiest time period
for
folks, working folks, so I would extend the time period. If you want to launch, I get wanting to launch it, but I think the application period has to be longer.
I guess I'm just, to sort of sounds like everyone's comfortable moving forward. So I think today's the day to decide. I'm open to all ideas.
I'm good, and I'm good with the 60 days, because what that does, it's the first try, right? It's the first pilot. We're going to come back to this within a couple more months, post it. So let's see what we get in 60 days, what the interest is, and that will guide our decisions as we move forward then too. I mean, if we're fortunate to get applications, let's decide on those applications and then have that moving forward on a parallel track to what the town board then decides on how to open up another round then too. I don't mind looking at it that way. Let's see what we get in 60 days. And if not, we'll come back to it right after.
That works for me.
I'm good with that. I don't know if it's like the word another round, because the proposal is now it's rolling, right? So if I don't get my application in the 60 days and we get 90 applications, if I get it in the day after, I'm then number 91, I'm assuming, right? If you're doing it as a rolling.
Yeah, that is mentioned in here that you could, following the application period, applications may continue to be accepted on a rolling basis at the town's discretion.
And we use may very, very, deliberately, because if we've only received 8 applications, we would want to, allow for others to apply until the funding's out. Speaking of which, we did have the public hearing about the funding. I'm assuming that we all approve formally the $1 million.
Right. So you're going to put the resolution,
I'll put that resolution
on
for Thursday. We'll launch this program. And if we do have, there will be another conversation, because if we have more than 10 eligible applicants, there's not funding after that. So I don't know if the rest of the people stay on a list and we fund more. At this point, that hasn't been determined.
Right. And that requires a public hearing.
Yeah,
if we
of course.
If we want to add more money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm open to, increasing the pot, so to speak, for 2026.
But that's why we use May, because I don't think that we would continue to take applications if, there were so many on,
Gotcha.
We then need to consider whether we wanted to fund some people who already applied, start a new program,
Okay. All right.
What else do you need on this? Anything?
I think.
Mark, is there any other decisions you need from us today?
No, I don't think so.
So you're going to go back to work on your fillable PDFs?
Yes. Lots of details to do the rollout.
And one other person to thank is Linda Norris, who I know is very involved in all things housing, and gave a final overview, a review of this, and had some good comments as well.
Yes. So. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you, Joanne.
All right, Ed, you're up. I guess you're going to take us through the memo that you prepared.
Good afternoon. So just by way of context and background, we're discussing the response to the public and planning board comments to the public hearing on the proposed accessory staff housing local law, which for context is this local law would allow for local businesses to create housing opportunities and housing units on their property in the form of either a boarding house, an apartment, or a single-family home, subject to the Department of Health's septic standards and site plan and special permit from the planning board. There was a public hearing held on the proposed local law on June 4th. One member of the public spoke at that hearing. That speaker's comments were not specific to any provision of the local law, and were generally negative regarding the enactment of any affordable housing laws in the town, but notwithstanding, we'll address those comments. First comment is, who gave input on drafting this local law? There was no input whatsoever from anyone who is not employed by the town of East Hampton. The accessory staff housing local law came about as a response to local businesses seeking to find additional ways to house their employees and to address the overall need within the town community for housing opportunities for those who live and work in town. The text of the local law was drafted primarily by Eric Shantz and myself. Substantial input from the town planning director, the town housing director, Councilman Calder Piedmonte. We had a work session with the town board where there were some changes and some discussion, and the town planning board has reviewed and commented on the law as well. Again, there was no involvement whatsoever by anyone, lawyers or otherwise, outside the employee of the town, other than we had a consultation with the Suffolk County Health Department to talk about the septic standards and how that might work. Second comment is the workforce housing law and accessory staff housing are intimately related and affect each other, presumably by workforce housing. The speaker is referring to the rent-restricted employer-sponsored housing local law that is also under consideration by the town board. Excuse me. There's no real substantive connection between the two proposed local laws, other than the town's effort to try and address a housing crisis through different regulatory approaches. The rent-restricted housing law may be implemented only on properties that carry both the AHO and LBO zoning designations, which significantly limits the number of sites eligible for that development. In contrast, the law that we're talking about today, the accessory staff housing law, permits housing solely on existing properties, business properties, sorry. Both laws require considerable review. Applicants need to obtain site plan approval and special permits from the town planning board. In addition, permits for the accessory staff housing must comply with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services regulations governing septic flow. Each proposed local law contains its own distinct provisions governing the operation and management of those special permits. There's many itemized ways we can distinguish the two, but they're very different. Both generally offer businesses a way to house employees. The accessory staff housing in a more direct manner for those that have the space within their businesses. Comment, again, is the limit of 25 special permits in the town law an annual or a general cap? The cap of 25 special permits contained in this law has no time limit. Of course, as we were discussing, a change to that number would require an amendment to the code to fix that. Next comment, should employment be tied to housing? Who is the beneficiary, the employee or the employer? Employer-provided housing has a long tradition on the east end of Long Island. Because of the extraordinary cost of housing in a high-end resort second home market, employers have been offering housing to employees in the agricultural, hospitality, construction, landscaping, and retail businesses for decades. Housing provided by employers benefits all parties and the community in general. This law allows residents to remain living and working in East Hampton, helps ensure that businesses in town can function and provide needed services. Such housing arrangements also keep local workers involved in the local community and helps reduce daily traffic on the local roads. Next comment is who can reside in these units? The response, only employees of the businesses that obtain the special permit, the site plan, and the Suffolk County Health Department approval for accessory staff housing would be permitted to reside in these units. Next comment, what will the rents become? The local law expressly states that rent amounts for units must meet the town's affordable housing standards, which is in 255-1-20, which it sets forth the maximum rents. So that's the end of the comments in response to the public hearing comments. The planning board had filed a memorandum with the town board on April 23rd regarding its comments on this local law as well. The planning board stated that it generally supports the accessory staff housing program and recognizes its potential to help address workforce housing needs. First comment from the planning board had to do with tenant eligibility. Consider establishing a minimum age requirement for tenants to discourage misuse of units. Short answer to that is discrimination in housing against any age group in New York State is expressly prohibited. But moreover, occupants and landlords of rental units created under the local law will have the same rights and responsibilities as any other tenant or any other rental arrangement, and will be regulated by New York specifically says will be regulated by New York landlord tenant law. Additionally, the number of occupants in any housing that's done pursuant to this local law will be limited by the Suffolk County Sanitary Code as well. A permit for the town Office of Housing and Community Development is required of all accessory staff housing, and the town code enforcement office, the fire marshal, and the building inspector also have jurisdiction over any town code violations. Next planning board comment is the current first come, first served structure may create unintended inequities and logistical issues. Larger employers with greater resources may secure slots ahead of smaller employers with potentially greater need. Our response to that is having an open application process treats applicants equally under neutral objective standards. This process avoids subjective decision-making and the risk of subjective criteria for selecting who gets a special permit. The town board's purpose is to address urgent housing needs in a variety of ways in an expeditious manner. Adding a subjective criteria or reserving unclaimed places for potential applicants in a limited pool of 25 will further delay the process. Some smaller businesses on smaller lots may not qualify for larger numbers of tenants due to health department limitations. We've discussed that here in the board previously. Smaller businesses currently have the option of applying for existing special permit that allows apartments in commercial structures. Next planning board comment. It's a long one. The planning board requests clarification regarding the rationale for limiting the program to 25 applicants. A concentration of applications from a single hamlet could lead to localized density or crowding concerns. While there is an interest in avoiding overconcentration of staff housing units, current conditions suggest the town is well below such a threshold. It's unclear whether this cap is intended as a temporary wait-and-see measure that could be adjusted over time. The planning board recommends evaluating alternative allocation methods and further justifying or revisiting the proposed cap. So, what's known as a compound question. The maximum occupancy limit of 16 persons per property, together with the strict septic capacity requirements imposed by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, which, by the way, must include the existing business septic use as well as the housing, will constrain the total number of occupants permitted on any site. In addition, the typical lot sizes associated with most business uses in town will further limit overall density. As the planning board noted in its own question, the current conditions suggest the town is well below such a threshold. The cap of 25 special permits has been included in the law for two primary reasons. First, because the town has no prior experience with this type of housing. It's uncertain how the business community will respond to that opportunity. And so it's therefore prudent to evaluate that response before permitting additional density. Second, establishing a finite number of permitted uses allows for a meaningful and quantifiable environmental assessment of the impacts of this proposed law. So there will be an extensive EAF that will be prepared by the planning department on this local law. The cap is not intended as temporary, but the language of the local law specifically allows for a possible increase in the number of permits after due investigation and consideration. Next planning board comment is the board also notes that as currently envisioned, the program does not appear to be geared toward families and therefore is unlikely to generate impacts on school enrollment. The local law is not designed to favor or disfavor families. Provisions are made to allow for single-family residences and apartments, both of which easily accommodate families. The law is designed to offer employers alternative forms of housing that would best suit their specific needs without creating any preference or familiar relationships or status. Next comment is definition of vacant land. The language should be clarified to ensure that commercial use is established prior to submission of an application, rather than allowing standalone residential development under this provision. I would refer everyone, including the planning board, to the language of the actual proposed local law, which, first of all, identifies this as an accessory use. An accessory staff housing development shall only be located on a property which contains a legally pre-existing principal use, or which is applying for site plan to establish a separate principal use, and in all cases shall be deemed an accessory use. That's a quote out of the current law. Also, the current local law, or the proposed local law, says to ensure that the housing is accessory to the principal use, only the owner of the business for which the tenants are employees may apply for the special use. Planning board's next comment is additional guidance is needed regarding whether accessory staff housing approvals run with the land or remain tied to the property owner, particularly in cases of sale or business closure. The board assumes that these provisions would run with the property and require compliance by subsequent owner, but requests confirmation. Again, Section 8 of the proposed local law makes it very clear that the special permit may be transferred to a subsequent property owner by application, as in the same manner as the original application. If there is such a transfer, it will not take effect until the new owner submits a complete application, and the application is approved by the Office of Housing and Community Development. And there are some other provisions in the code that also address that question. Next comment from the planning board is the board seeks clarification on program administration, specifically whether the housing office will be responsible for ongoing oversight and enforcement. Again, Section 8 of the proposed local law provides that the owner must apply annually for a permit to operate the housing unit. The owner must submit a copy of the leases and supporting documents, and it provides for ongoing oversight by the housing office and annual checking and annual applications. They're also subject, pursuant to this proposed local law, all units are subject to inspection for compliance with the town code and the building code by the fire marshal, the building department, the Office of Housing and Community Development, and the code enforcement officers. That's all in this proposed local law as well. Next, planning board comment, design standards. The board recommends establishing clear design specifications or minimum standards. In addition to ARB oversight, the incorporating aesthetic guidelines directly into the town code may provide greater consistency and predictability. Given that the response is, given that the planning board and the architectural review board will be required for all special permits for accessory staff housing, and that implementation of this design and specification is going to need to be tailored to whatever particular property it's at, and we have a wide variety of business looks and sizes and everything else. This proposal currently allows for creative solutions and avoids overly prescriptive requirements, and is still subject to the approval of both the planning board and the ARB. Next planning board comment has to do with minimum lot size. The board questions whether the proposed 1 acre minimum lot size may be more restrictive than necessary. Many potential participants in this program, particularly employers located in hamlet centers or commercial districts, operate on smaller lots, smaller parcels. The planning board recommends reevaluating whether a reduced lot size would better align with existing development patterns and programs. We had that conversation among this board when we first considered this law. Eric Shantz spent a good deal of time working through the septic loads, the septic standards that would be required on a smaller lot, and what it would take to even get 1 or 2 housing units once you look at what's there for almost any business. And we all met by Zoom with the health department representative on the same issue. And we spent a lot of time considering going less than 1 acre. But essentially, because of the health department requirements for the septic standards, it would be almost prohibit adding dwelling units to anything under 1 acre. It'd be very difficult to do that under the current standards. Again, some opportunities for creating housing on smaller lots may be found with the apartments and commercial structures. This was a question we gave a great deal of consideration to. Next comment from the planning board had to do with non-conforming uses. The provision allowing eligibility for properties with non-conforming uses that have received a use variance or, quote, other relief, close quote, should be clarified. Specifically, it should be determined whether a CO qualifies as other relief. This is a little bit of a legal answer, but under New York law and the town code, a CO does not relieve a non-conforming use of its non-conformity. It's still non-conforming. The issuance of a CO to a non-conforming use makes the non-conforming use a legal use, but does not change the non-conforming status. So if it's non-conforming, it's non-conforming. A non-conforming use with a CO may not be enlarged or expanded except to a conforming use and ceases to exist once the use is discontinued. A use variance, which they raise, on the other hand, is a formal permission created by the zoning board to allow a property to be used in a way that is not permitted under the current zone that runs with the land. The proposed law actually states, and they cut it off, that one must obtain a use variance or other necessary relief to remain in the zoning district which is located. Because the non-conforming use with a CO ceases once the use is discontinued, it does not have the right to remain in the zoning district. Next comment from the planning board. The planning board requests an estimate of how many properties townwide would qualify under the proposed criteria to better understand the potential scale and impact of the program. The response is the proposed local law expressly limits the number of permits that may be issued for accessory staff housing to 25. The secret analysis of the local law will assess the impact of the law based upon the issuance of 25 permits. That's the end of the response to the comments.
Okay. Thank you, Ed.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Ed. Ed put a ton of work on this and has been a huge help to all things housing in East Hampton. And Eric Shantz as well, who put in a ton of work, as well as Tina and Mark from Planning and Housing. And look, I really appreciate the public process, the public comment from the one member of the public who spoke, as well as the planning board. I think that it's helpful so that we know we've addressed all the possible concerns, because sometimes we might miss something. Most of these, as Ed just laid out, I think have been addressed. David also brought up the smaller lots and worried about commercial districts. We spoke at length about that, and the fact that we have commercial accessory apartments already available in those areas made it easier to keep this, at a 1 acre gap. Frankly, I'm somebody who pushed for a smaller lot size on this as well. So I understand those questions, but I'm happy to say that I think that we've thought about and addressed all of the questions that have come up in this law. And, sometimes we haven't, and we require another public hearing. In this case, I don't think we do. My opinion, this is ready to be approved. I also want to acknowledge one of the callers, Leo Daunt from the Montauk Chamber of Commerce, called today in support of this. I wasn't expecting that, and he also sent an email this morning. I did speak to the Montauk Chamber recently about this and other housing opportunities because they asked me to. And in his letter to us, he's supportive, but also says, make sure you make it easy. And so that just illustrates, I think, the balance that we're trying to strike. We want these to be realistically attainable solutions for people, but we also want to protect neighborhoods, the community, and the town as a whole. And just like we went through on the ADU loans, that's the balance we're constantly trying to strike. There's not a clear line anywhere that gets it perfect every time. But I just want to acknowledge sort of that support, but also concern that they don't want it to be too difficult. And I know others are going to be concerned that it's too permissive. And I think that the current law, while certainly is not going to be perfect, is a really good step forward in the right direction for affordable housing. And I think that the typologies, the rooming house, for example, that we're including in this, which doesn't exist in the town, and I think is, recognizes the reality of the type of situations that employees can most comfortably live in, and it's not always a single-family home. So I'm excited about this, and I hope the board will agree and we can pass it.
I always find that easy and difficult depends on the eye of the beholder. At the moment, if you're a neighbor, you're concerned about your quality of life and you want to see that you're protected. And I also get that it can get arduous for people that just want to get it done. I think this law as it is perfect for the moment, and for considering a new code in our town. I also just, looking at that comment that people get concerned about tying housing to employment, and I can't think of a more clear, transparent type of housing than housing actually on the business property that clearly states what type of housing to the tenant they are in. And I think there can be no misconception about whether this is, general housing. It is built on the location. It clearly states its intent. I'm supportive of moving forward on it. Thank you, Kate.
I have any more comments than you two had. So thank you, Ed, for bringing this back and actually addressing all the public's comments then too.
Yeah, and I think you did a tremendous job in response to the public's comments and to the planning board's comments. As I read it, I'm like, I couldn't say that better myself. So well done. So
it's a good example of Ed's standard work.
Yeah, that I can see. So I think we need to do SECRA, right?
And Eric has started the process in anticipation of the conversation. It's not ready yet, but.
Okay, so it's looking like it's something we're going to adopt in July, hopefully?
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
All right, we're all through our topics and we're up to liaison reports. David.
Yes, I want to let everyone know that the Playhouse roof, which is a $1.1 million project, that those repairs or renovation is full on our way. They're actually taking a little pause this week at the request of the Playhouse Montauk Playhouse Foundation on there because they have some events happening there, but that's still continuing to go. I want to let everyone know that the Army Corps of Engineers, the Montauk crossover projects, their final engineering for the one crossover, the Lowenstein Park entrance has been approved, and that should be, they're going to be installing that next week, and they start the demobilization, so it should all be complete by the end of next week. We'll let everyone know that over at Stephen Hand's Path, we will be, the parking actually that we installed over there actually was well used. And how did I know that? It's because Little League held their championships on this past Friday. There are hundreds of family members there. It was actually a great turnout and a great barbecue. Congratulations to all the Little League teams that won and the softball teams there then too. And it was a very nice evening that went long into the evening on there. I want to let everyone know that at sanitation is temporarily not accepting construction debris from commercial carters to clear up some of the room that's needed over there. The confluence of events on there, it seems like the building industry is doing pretty well right now, or that the weather is doing well and the construction debris is increased. We can only have a certain amount till we get it trucked out. We're hoping that will be complete by potentially Thursday. This also leads into the about $1.8 million project that the town has been undergoing the last year in our construction debris lean-to, which will make it easier for their town staff to remove construction debris. And I know they just poured the concrete on the apron this week, so hopefully that can be done in the next month. Maybe we can get an update on that from our liaison for sanitation. Want to let everyone know that water main, you good?
Yeah, you can do that.
In Montauk, there was a water main break last night that was in the area of Flamingo and Westlake Drive. Suffolk County Water Authority was on site all evening, and most repairs were done by 8 a.m. this morning, but there's still some residuals there. Anyone has more questions on that, please contact Suffolk County Water Authority if you're in the affected area then too. Want to let everyone know that the Net Peak Fire Reduction Project, which is a New York State project, is still going well then too. Again, there was a $2.2 million grant from the governor to the actually state parks for emergency tree felling. That project's a 3-year project. It wasn't granted to the town of East Hampton, as is misinformed by many or some, but it went to the state. The town has actually the state has completed their tree felling in the area and prescriptive burn piles. Currently, right now, that the state is working on the emergency access via the Palmanook Path, and that is almost complete from the west to the east. It was completed by a forestry mulcher. That was a mulcher that actually State Parks purchased out here in the spring, and the fire chiefs that were on site. The fuel reduction work, chipping and hauling away by the substation was completed as well. And as of now, we're in the current bat restrictions. That'd be the state's and current bat restriction for cutting, but they are still identifying priority areas for this winter's felling under the multi-year service contract that they procured and have in place. And still the state is monitoring of the areas that the work has been done, meaning they're tracking data for pine regrowth versus possible invasive species, which is very important as this progresses. This was all very well stated in the multiple public meetings that the state had on this subject. Let me see here. I only have one other thing. I want to congratulate all the graduates. There are multiple graduates from kindergarten, from kindergartens to pre-K happens to 8th graders to seniors in high school, and these are going from all our school districts within the town of East Hampton. I specifically want to congratulate the senior class of East Hampton High School and their class president for graduation, and their class president is my daughter, Brinley Lease. Congratulations to them all. They're a wonderful grad kids, and it's nice to see them all go all the way through to their new ventures in life and next chapters. As parents, we all will be saddened a little bit, but congratulations to the kids. It's a really fun time of year for them all to be accepting all their salutations for all the hard work they put in from kindergarten all the way through. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Thanks, David. Kate?
Yeah, I'm going to skip mine until next week.
Okay. Ian?
Until next meeting.
Just a very brief liaison report. Spring CAC meets tonight at Ashwalk Hall at 6:30. Conveniently enough, their main topic of conversation is Accabonac Harbor. I've got a lot of good things to say now, thanks to our presentation today. Again, 6:30 tonight at Ashwalk Hall for Spring CAC. All are welcome, and we're always looking for new contributions, new members. And then CHAB, Community Housing Advisory Board, will meet next Wednesday, June 24th, in the Planning Department Conference Room at 300 Panago Place. And again, that's open to the public as well. So anybody wants to attend, you're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Ian. So as I stated last week, PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals, have been detected in the Suffolk County Water Authority public drinking water supply wells just south of the battery storage facility on Cove Hollow Road. I called for a coordinated task force, and yesterday we had our second call with over 40 participants, including staff from the governor's office, New York State DEC, including the DEC Commissioner, Amanda Lefton, New York State Department of Health, the County Executive's Office, Suffolk County Department of Health Services, and Suffolk County Water Authority, as well as town and East Hampton Village officials, and these calls will occur weekly. Again, to those folks, if you're on a private well in the immediate area, you may be contacted by the county as part of the door-to-door testing. And if you have questions or believe you may be affected, please reach out to the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, and we will keep you updated as we learn more. David touched on the water main break in Montauk. 2027 budget, it's that time. We've started our 2027 budget process. Department heads must submit personnel requests by June 30th, and they must input their budget requests by July 7th. After that, we conduct our one-on-one meetings during the month of August, and we'll have a tentative budget to the town clerk by September 30th, and then we do our public presentations. You don't realize, Michael, the role you're going to play in this. So that'll happen. The public presentations will be in the month of October, and then we hold the public hearing in November, and then we must adopt the budget by November 20th. And we are currently, folks have seen around our outside accounting firm. They've been doing the annual audit that's going to be completed in the coming weeks. And we're going to have a presentation at a work session in August. Also, just want to talk about work being done here at Town Hall. Folks may have noticed that we've got a presence here and a dumpster here at Town Hall. We're in the middle of a window and facade restoration project. Ronald Webb Builders is doing the work. They started by removing each individual window from the east and south sides, and they are being rebuilt. We plan to stage the project so that eventually every side of this building will be completed. And we just want to thank folks here at Town Hall for their patience during the workday. It can get pretty loud at times, and this phase of the project is estimated to be completed in about 6 weeks. We also are going to be starting after the 4th of July on the Peach House restoration. That's a project we've talked about here at work sessions, and it's the future home of our HR department, and we're excited to have these projects move forward. Lastly, I just want to mention that the East Hampton Town Police Department, in conjunction with Sag Harbor and East Hampton Village Departments, will be hosting an East End Youth Police Academy from July 27th through July 31st for kids in grades 8 through 12. Students will be exposed to a variety of learning and hands-on experience related to police work. Lieutenant Ken Alversa and School Resource Officer Devin Toya are our town department liaisons. And if folks are interested, we ask them to visit the town's police department website for more information and to download an application. So we've had such success with our Citizens Police Academy that we've now, it has been decided that we want to do a week-long interactive summer educational program for students in grades 8 through 12. And that's what I have for my liaison report, so we can now move on to resolutions. David.
My privilege to offer Resolution 2026-997. It's to amend Resolution 2026-270 to change the funding line from which invoices will be paid.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 998 is amend Resolution 2026-988. This is to hereby amend the correct budget code.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 999 is appoint additional members of the 2026 Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee and revise the membership. Whereas Rebecca Holloway resigned from her appointment as CCOM, she's no longer representative, and Frank Jacob Fiso resigned as the Village of Sag Harbor representative, and where the Village of Sag Harbor nominated Mary Ann Eddy to be the candidate for the Village of Sag Harbor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 2026-1000 is amend Resolution 2026-945 for the water quality grant for 151 North Main Street, where it was actually set forth that it was 51 North Main Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 1001, which is the acceptance of Cityscape Consultants 2026 proposal for professional services. Resolve the town hereby enters into an agreement for the wireless telecommunications facilities processing of applications for services outlined in the Cityscape proposal. They shall be assigned work on an on-call basis and paid in accordance with their fixed rates and a fee schedule shown in their proposal. This is a not to exceed amount of $25,000, and this is retroactive January 1st, 2026, and is through December 31st, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 1002 is the list appointment and promotion to Chief Building Inspector for Richard Normoyle Jr., whereas Richard Normoyle Jr. is the Principal Building Inspector and the Department Head of the Building Department, and whereas Suffolk County Department of Civil Services has given an examination for Chief Building Inspector, and Richard Normoyle Jr. is reachable on the said list, therefore be it resolved that Richard Normoyle Jr. is hereby promoted to the full-time position of Chief Building Inspector, Department Head, with the Building Inspector's Department for a 40-hour work week and an annual salary of $140,000, effective retroactive to June 15th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 1003 is to authorize the town attorney to commence legal action against appropriate parties seeking injunctive relief and other legal remedies relating to the use and occupancy of 435 East Lake Drive in Montauk.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2026-1004 is to authorize an employee agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
1005 is to accept bid EH 26034 for T-shirts, sweatshirts, and other uniform items. This was a rebid, and it goes to ABC Custom Sales, Inc.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And that's all the resolutions I have, right, Michael? Just want to confirm. Okay.
I'd like to motion to go into executive session for CPF litigation, real estate, personnel,
Second.
Contracts.
and contracts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, Zach, at LTV.